Once upon a time, in a world teetering on the brink of chaos, lived a young man named Gao Xiaolin. He was an ordinary high school student, with no particular talents or extraordinary prospects, just an average teenager navigating the daily grind of school, friendships, and routine. His life was mundane, predictable, until one seemingly trivial event turned everything upside down in an instant. It all began on a seemingly normal day. Gao Xiaolin was late for class, a rare occurrence for him. The reason was peculiar. A mischievous friend had accidentally turned off his alarm, disrupting his usual morning routine. In haste, Gao rushed out of his house, hurriedly pushing past random obstacles, desperately trying to reach the school on time. His panic was palpable. He sprinted through crowded streets, dodging pedestrians, weaving between cars, his heart pounding with urgency. But fate had a twisted sense of humor. Just as he darted across a busy intersection, a car skidded out of control. No matter how fast he ran, it was too late. The vehicle struck him with tremendous force, knocking him to the ground in a crash that seemed to last forever. That moment marked the end of Gao Xiaolin's fragile mortal life. An abrupt, surreal transition from the warmth of existence to the cold coldness of death. Darkness enveloped him, and for a brief moment, everything was silent. Yet what followed was no ordinary afterlife. Instead of peaceful oblivion, Gao found himself face to face with an enormous, grotesque creature. A towering, monstrous being that devoured countless human figures in a frenzy of destruction. Its colossal tentacles flailed and struck, leaving a trail of chaos and despair in its wake. In this post-apocalyptic nightmare, brave fighters appeared. Among them was a skilled samurai wielding a gleaming sword, slashing furiously at the tentacles trying to hold the creature at bay. The samurai's swift, precise cuts were notable, but another figure, a bald man with a sharp gaze, warned him with a grim expression. This beast, he explained, possessed an almost supernatural ability to regenerate, making it an unstoppable force of destruction. Gao Xiaolin watched as the scene unfolded with growing bewilderment. He wanted to understand what had happened to him, to make sense of this chaotic new reality. His mind was racing with questions as he saw the creature devouring another unfortunate soul. Amidst the chaos, he caught snippets of conversation, warnings about the creature's resilience and the hopelessness of their situation. Then, as if plucked from the depths of a nightmare, Gao Xiaolin found himself suddenly transported to a different realm. It was a realm filled with darkness and confusion, yet strangely familiar. He realized he was still alive, though he had just been killed moments earlier. Was he dreaming? Was this some cruel illusion or reality? The boundary between life and death blurred indistinguishably. He attempted to gather his thoughts. Was he dead? Had he been resurrected? The questions flooded his mind, but clarity was elusive. Just as he wondered whether he had truly died or been caught in some lingering limbo, a voice shattered the silence. An unfamiliar yet unmistakably digital tone echoed around him. "Yes, you have died," the voice confirmed. "Your foolishness led to your demise, and now you have been revived." Gao Xiaolin turned sharply, bewildered. Squinting into the ethereal glow behind him, he saw a radiant, pulsating light, an entity that radiated an unearthly power. Within moments, the true nature of his predicament became evident. This was no ordinary afterlife. It was a system, a digital entity orchestrating a strange, cruel game, one that had robbed him of multiple lives. He felt a mixture of anger, frustration, and curiosity welling up inside. He cursed his own naivety. The system's presence was undeniable. It hovered close, issuing instructions in a mechanical yet oddly attentive voice. The system explained that, in total, he had already lost 9 lives before finally being granted a reprieve. The reason for such a delay, it claimed, was due to another system, his so-called friend, who had deactivated the alarm that led to his death, causing the system to generate this cruel cycle. Gao Xiaolin listened with an odd mixture of skepticism and acceptance. He thought about the strange, unending loop of failures he had experienced. Each time he tried to survive, whether by leading survivors, infiltrating zombie hordes, or disguising himself as the undead, something always went wrong. The undead deposed him, betrayed him, or simply overwhelmed him. He faced starvation, deception, and betrayal in every single attempt. Yet, through perseverance and desperate improvisation, he persisted. His death toll mounted, first by zombie bites, then by starvation, betrayal, and even deception. It was as if fate had conspired against him, forcing him into a series of dark, tragic conclusions. He had tried to make sense of this hellish cycle, but it seemed relentless, with no signs of remission. On his 6th, 7th, and even 8th attempts, he had hesitated, tried to play it safe to avoid unnecessary risks. Still, calamities unfolded regardless. Betrayal by allies, ambushes, unforgiving zombies, and destructive chaos. Each failure further validated his growing despair, yet he refused to give up entirely. Now, on his 9th life, he had resolved to take it slow, to avoid rushing headlong into danger. He adopted a calm, almost resigned attitude, thinking perhaps a measured approach could bring him some relief from this nightmare. But the cruel reality persisted. He was still fighting for survival amidst relentless waves of monsters and chaos. Meanwhile, the world around him was unraveling. People were tearing apart everything in their path, driven to madness and desperation. Others fled in terror, leaving behind supplies and hopes of salvation. In this forsaken world, the idea of collecting resources seemed pointless when mere survival was the only priority. Nevertheless, Gao Xiaolin understood that staying alive was better than holding on to supplies. Survival was everything. In a particularly perilous moment, Gao encountered a young girl in grave danger. Her situation was so dire that it could recalibrate the entire story's age classification, hinting at themes far beyond simple apocalypse survival. This girl's plight could alter the narrative fundamentally, making it more intense and profound. As Gao processed this, he experienced a strange urge to abandon caution altogether. He decided that if death was inevitable, he might as well seek some form of entertainment. A reckless thought crossed his mind. Perhaps, just perhaps, he could find some thrill amid the chaos. With a spirited shout, he charged headlong into the chaos, sparks of electricity crackling around him. His sudden audacity drew the attention of those fleeing the carnage. They wondered whether this reckless young man truly knew how to fight, or if he was simply craving death. Regardless, Gao Xiaolin grasped his electric sword, wielding it with surprising skill. With a swift strike, he cut through a monstrous tentacle as if it were melting butter. The onlookers watched, stunned, tears trembling in their eyes, as the boy annihilated the creature with ease. Amid the chaos, the girl attempted to approach and thank him, but Gao merely waved her off, telling her to run. Without hesitation, he hurried toward a nearby convenience store. Inside, he discovered shelves laden with food, something he had been deprived of in his past incarnations. Almost instinctively, he began devouring everything he could reach: pizza, chips, candies, and a cold soda he hadn't tasted in years. The comfort of familiar flavors surged through him, briefly covering the trauma of his situation. The others looked on in disbelief as he consumed with insatiable hunger, completely unbothered by their astonished gazes. Suddenly, a tentacle struck him, trying to finish him off. Yet, for the first time, Gao Xiaolin felt no fear. Here, in the chaos, he could finally die without regret. It was a strange sense of liberation. He opened his eyes again, and what he saw was bewildering. Somehow, he was still in the same place. Had he died again? Was this some ghostly aftershock? Or perhaps he hadn't truly perished. The lines between life and death blurred beyond recognition. Before he could ponder further, a familiar voice echoed in his mind, disembodied yet unmistakably real. The voice explained, quite bluntly, that yes, he had indeed died, due to his foolishness, and now he was being given another chance. The realization hit him hard. He was not dead but being revived for some kind of cruel game. Gao Xiaolin turned, searching for the source of the voice, and saw a luminous, radiant figure hovering behind him. The figure was an artificial intelligence, an overarching system that governed his fate within this strange, surreal realm. The system's voice continued, revealing startling truths. All 9 previous lives had ended in failure. The reason behind the delay in his resurrection was due to a malfunction caused by an unknown friend, a fellow system, that had deactivated the alarm, thus extending the cycle. The system explained that it was responsible for his various deaths. Each attempt was marked by catastrophe. Betrayal, hunger, monsters, and despair. Despite all the suffering, he had fought bitterly, refusing to surrender. His resilience was remarkable, but the system was now providing a different mission, a new set of tasks to accomplish in this apocalyptic world. This mission, the system outlined, was to restore peace, to bring order in chaos. Only if he succeeded could he return to his original world. Failure meant absolute destruction. He would be eliminated entirely. The system claimed it had offered 10 opportunities altogether, but he had already used 9. This was his final chance. Gao Xiaolin demanded clarity. He wanted to understand the nature of this mission and the rules that governed it. The system's response was cryptic. Forget the details. All that matters now is that you have a single life left. Time is of the essence. A sudden sensation prickled in his senses. The system announced that it was time for his first task, a test that would determine his survival. His assignment was straightforward: to sell snacks and drinks in the ruined streets and collect a total of 50 crystals, precious resources that could be exchanged for attributes and other valuable rewards. He couldn't believe his ears. His new mission was to set up a street stall and sell food in a world overrun with monsters. The idea struck him as oddly trivial and bizarre given the bleak circumstances. Yet he had no choice but to comply. Immediately, he found himself imagining the streets filled with vendors, neon signs flickering amidst the ruins, and himself, standing behind a cart, shouting to attract customers. But barely had he started contemplating this plan when he saw a horde of zombies approaching rapidly. They were closing in, driven by primal hunger and madness. Panic surged through him. He shouted, trying to warn others, "They're coming! We're all going to be eaten!" Before he could even begin his first sale, he was already fleeing for his life, running blindly away from danger. In that instant, the system's voice rang out again, asking, "What are you so afraid of?" Gao Xiaolin's mind scrambled. Of course he was afraid. Afraid of being bitten, of dying again, of failing this cruel game. His heart pounded as he kept running, desperately seeking safety. He remembered something crucial at that moment. He possessed a system, a device that could potentially turn the tide. He demanded that the system grant him speed, strength, something extraordinary to combat the monsters. He called out, "System, I want speed of an eagle, strength of a bear, power beyond imagination." He looked at his status screen, searching for confirmation. But to his surprise, the data was incomplete. His statistics were barely available, with many details concealed or inaccessible. A strange feeling grew within him. Something was off. He asked the system what was happening, and the system explained that his current stats were too low to be displayed properly. This revelation deepened his sense of mystery. Why were his abilities so feeble? Was he truly this weak? Or was there something else at play? The system's cryptic responses only heightened his frustration and curiosity, pushing him further into this complex, perilous world that was both familiar and alien. Thus, the saga of Gao Xiaolin continued, each attempt more harrowing than the last. As he navigated this treacherous landscape, he pondered the meaning of survival, the nature of his own existence, and whether redemption was truly possible amid endless chaos. Every moment was a battle against monsters, against betrayal, and against the very system that dictated his destiny. Yet, within that chaos, a glimmer of hope still flickered, a faint promise that, somehow, he might triumph over the darkness that had engulfed his life. In a world teetering on the edge of chaos, survival often hinged on the most unexpected elements. Xiaoling, the protagonist of our story, found himself navigating this treacherous landscape with a mixture of wits, luck, and an emerging understanding of extraordinary powers. It was a confrontation with the unknown that would forever change his perspective and survival tactics. At first glance, the threat seemed insurmountable. Zombies roamed freely, their guttural snarls echoing through the desolate streets as they sought their next meal. Xiaoling, armed with little more than a makeshift weapon and his quick thinking, had stumbled upon what appeared to be a dilapidated carpet lying discarded on the ground. He initially dismissed it as useless, nothing more than a piece of debris left behind in this apocalyptic chaos. Yet, in that moment of desperation, he grasped it, rolled it up, and swung it defensively at the nearest zombie. His hope was to stun or possibly eliminate the creature, but the zombie merely staggered back, undeterred. Another zombie struck from behind, throwing him to the ground and sending the carpet flying aside. The scene quickly devolved into chaos, with zombies closing in for a final, devastating bite. Xiaoling, feeling the sting of defeat, realized that he was facing death with an awareness that his previous life might have been more forgiving. The crushing realization was almost worse than the bite itself, as a wave of disappointment washed over him, robbing him of any desire to eat his precious supplies of food. However, a strange phenomenon suddenly interrupted this despair. As zombie after zombie approached, they appeared to collide with an unseen barrier, an invisible force field that rendered Xiaoling temporarily invulnerable while he remained within its protective boundary. The monsters, unable to pass, veered away in confusion, leaving him stunned but safe. It was as if he had become virtually invisible, hidden from the deadly instincts of the undead horde. This realization struck him forcefully. Perhaps that old, discarded carpet was not entirely useless after all. From that moment, Xiaoling's outlook shifted dramatically. The once dismissed piece of fabric was now a symbol of hope, shielding him and giving him a fighting chance. With renewed confidence, he promised himself never to underestimate that rickety old carpet again. He gently stroked it, vowing never to criticize its worth, and even humorously decided to assign a name to his system, calling it the Blue Sphere, to distinguish it clearly whenever he referenced that mysterious power. The distinction became necessary because, in this chaotic world, clarity was everything. Curiosity ignited within him. He pondered what might happen if he encountered other mutated creatures of different species, perhaps even more dangerous than the zombies already faced. The system, or the Blue Sphere, responded reassuringly that as long as he remained inside his designated food stall, his makeshift shelter, he was effectively immortal, immune to the attacks of any creature approaching him. This revelation sent a surge of hope through Xiaoling. For the first time, he saw a real chance at survival amid the relentless onslaught. He suddenly realized that this could be a turning point. The perilous environment was no longer an insurmountable obstacle but a challenge that could be overcome with clever tactics and the system's support. Excited by this realization, Xiaoling started to dance, a rare moment of jubilation flickering in the chaos around him. He mused aloud, contemplating that perhaps this mission wasn't as impossible as he had initially believed. Still, wisdom urged caution. The Blue Sphere's power was limited. It could activate only 3 times a day, and failing to complete his objectives within that window would leave him exposed and vulnerable once more. The sun was sinking rapidly, casting long shadows over the ruined city. Xiaoling remembered that once the 90-minute countdown was over and night fell, the activity of the monsters would intensify exponentially. The odds of surviving the night depended heavily on how well he managed his remaining activations of the system's protective abilities. Perhaps the most critical point was that once darkness descended, the creature's aggression would be at its peak, turning the streets into a deadly battleground. Meanwhile, across the ruins, Xiaoling observed the strange activities of the undead and mutated beasts. He marveled at the absurdity of setting up a food stall amidst such chaos, yet it turned out to be a stroke of luck. Out of the chaos, 3 figures emerged, seemingly survivors whose presence initially appeared benign. They announced that today's harvest had been excellent, and their unexpected visit was purportedly a sign of good fortune. Xiaoling, cautious yet intrigued, thought he had just encountered a fortunate coincidence, until their intentions became painfully clear. The 3 newcomers weren't mere passers-by. They were hostile, and their presence seemed out of place in this apocalyptic scenario. They questioned the strange setup. How could there be a food stand, with candies and chips, Doritos, gum, and other treats, amidst zombies and death? Their disbelief was palpable as they confronted Xiaoling, demanding explanations. He calmly welcomed them to sit and asked what they desired to eat, throwing humor into the tense atmosphere based on his limited supplies. To him, these items were invaluable treasures, pieces of normalcy in a world turned upside down. The intruders appeared puzzled and skeptical, quickly challenging his claims about his small establishment. One of them, seemingly the leader, scoffed and demanded to see the prices. Xiaoling, though modest, offered that his prices were incredibly affordable. Merely 50 crystals for a substantial meal, even an opportunity to take photos alongside him. His confident tone and calm demeanor seemed to throw them off guard. One of the men, perhaps angry or desperate, pulled a weapon, threatening to kill him if he didn't cooperate. The situation veered into a dangerous confrontation. In a swift display of his newfound abilities, Xiaoling snatched a soda from the aggressor's hand, asserting that they weren't as clever as they thought. His words carried weight, exuding an air of confidence, even a hint of mockery. The man, not amused, aimed his gun at Xiaoling, furious. He fired, but his shots were futile. They bounced harmlessly off the invisible barrier protecting Xiaoling's stall, leaving the attacker visibly enraged. Seeing their leader's failure, his companions hesitated, some trembling in fear. Suddenly, the assailant who had just fired responded with a bizarre twist. He was electrocuted, collapsing convulsively onto the ground. His companions watched in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. It seemed Xiaoling's barrier was not only invulnerable but also capable of applying a shocking counterattack when provoked. The fallen attacker remained motionless, crispy as if fried alive, and his friends stood frozen, unsure of how to proceed. Confusion reigned among the group. They speculated that either their leader or Xiaoling himself possessed some extraordinary abilities. One of them, marked with a tattoo resembling a rock pattern design, scoffed dismissively, refusing to believe in such powers. Meanwhile, Xiaoling was quietly reveling in the fact that his little cloth barrier exceeded his expectations. He realized that he held a powerful advantage, one that could be exploited further in this hostile environment. The intruders pressed Xiaoling about his tricks, eager to uncover his secret. He explained that many individuals possessed unique abilities in this world, but only a select few, those chosen, could harness such powers consistently. He then shifted back to business, offering a tempting deal. For just 50 crystals, customers could obtain numerous supplies of food, and even a photo opportunity with him. It was an enticing offer in a world where sustenance was scarce, and danger lurked at every turn. Yet, as the situation escalated, Xiaoling couldn't ignore the pain of losing a friend. Witnessing his companion fall to the ground, motionless and possibly dead, sparked a compassionate rage. Determined to help, he intended to assist the fallen comrade, even if it meant risking exposure or confrontation. In an act of defiance, one of the assailants launched a reckless attempt to stab Xiaoling, convinced that the problem lay solely with the weapon or the attacker. But Xiaoling, ever alert, countered swiftly, his reflexes and powers rendering the attack ineffective. The injured enemy, despite appearances, suddenly revived, his eyes blazing with anger and a desire for vengeance. He shouted that everyone should perish together, that they should all ascend to the afterlife as a team. His words, filled with menace, revealed his unraveling mind. Xiaoling watched him coldly, recognizing the madness underlying his rage. When the man lunged again, Xiaoling reached out with an open hand, prompting the attacker to recoil, staggering backwards in terror. The other assailants, witnessing this, fled in panic, screaming that they would not die at the hands of such a monstrous child. Their retreat was swift, but Xiaoling stayed rooted, observing the chaos. His mind was entirely focused. He understood this power was not something to be taken lightly. The enemy's misguided bravado and reckless determination contrasted sharply with Xiaoling's calculated calm. The night was approaching, and with it, the increased danger that lurked beyond his thin defenses. The world was closing in, but within this fragile sanctuary of his own creation, he found a fleeting sense of hope amid the darkness. In a world ravaged by chaos and destruction, survival depended on a keen eye and quick reflexes. The remnants of civilization lay scattered across desolate landscapes, where the undead roamed freely, hunting any living soul unfortunate enough to cross their path. Amid the wreckage, a lone figure moved swiftly, navigating the ruins with a determined glance, ever watchful for signs of danger or opportunities that might turn the tide in his favor. One day, as he scoured the deserted streets in search of supplies, he noticed an unusual sight: a large bag discarded on the ground. Gently, he approached and saw that it had been left behind, perhaps forgotten or abandoned in the chaos. Curious, he examined it more closely. The bag seemed sturdy, filled with items that could be useful, yet there was something odd about its shape. From behind the bag, a figure emerged, a girl, or at least what appeared to be one, based on the silhouette. With the crimson glow of the setting sun casting long shadows, her form became clearer. Her figure was sharp and angular, more reminiscent of a weapon than a person. Her silhouette had a triangular outline, narrowing towards the top and broadening at her hips, almost like a blade or an arrowhead. Her stance was poised, fierce, and healthy-looking, yet there was an air of danger about her. Despite having some women with full, rounded bodies, she appeared more streamlined, almost predatory. She was clad in torn, dark clothing, her movements swift and deliberate. The girl, or whatever she was, seemed almost prepared for battle, as if she were a warrior from a mythic apocalypse. With a sudden motion, she lunged forward. It was a rapid, ferocious attack, blow after blow, aimed at an unseen adversary. If this had been a story about a post-apocalyptic battleground, she would be the fiercest defender, fearless and resilient. Yet, in this strange game of survival, she was an unpredictable element. Unbeknownst to her, her attack was aimed at him, though he hardly realized it at first. He watched in shock as she launched herself at him, forcing him to react swiftly in self-defense. He barely dodged her strike, his heart pounding with terror. The speed of her assault was startling, something he had never seen from a zombie before. Zombies typically moved sluggishly, driven by instinct rather than agility. But this creature was different, fast, precise, almost intelligent in her ferocity. Panicked, he reached into his pocket and drew a cartridge of ammunition, his last in a dwindling supply, and threw it towards her, hoping to distract or deter her. It was all he had, a feeble defense in this deadly encounter. The shot was too close for comfort, but it bought him precious moments. With that brief pause, he scrambled towards his makeshift food station, a small setup he had managed to piece together in this wasteland. Just as he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, he realized his mistake. The protection he'd relied on for the day was already spent. In this world, endurance was a luxury he could no longer afford. His only option was to gather his belongings swiftly and attempt an escape. But the girl, or the creature, was not so easily deterred. She leapt over everything with ease, landing right before him like a shadow incarnate, crashing to the ground as if embodying failure itself. She fixed her gaze upon him, glowing with sinister intent. For a moment, he thought she was going to strike again. Frightened, he grabbed a handful of food, tossing it at her head in desperation. She moved closer, unmoved by his frantic attempts to appease her hunger. Desperation mounting, he seized a nearby object, a piece of scrap, a small, flimsy item, and threw it, shouting at her to back away. Tears welled up in his eyes as he closed them in acceptance of imminent death. Yet, when he dared to open one eye, he saw her chewing contentedly on a piece of dried octopus. She had taken the food and, remarkably, appeared satisfied. It was an odd scene, this fierce creature consuming dry seafood with such tranquility. She gave a small bite, swallowed, and seemingly felt complete. The strangest thing was her apparent preference for dried octopus, something he hadn't expected from a zombie. His brain scrambled to process this bizarre behavior, realizing she was, in some way, different from the typical undead monsters. Realizing that her hunger was a key to peace, he extended his hand, offering her a bag of potato chips he had collected earlier. She jumped excitedly, devouring the snack eagerly. Her happiness was palpable, and it gave him a glimmer of hope amid the despair. If he could resolve her hunger problem, perhaps she wouldn't be a threat. To keep her occupied, he started creating a trail of food leading toward a cliff edge. Carefully, he threw a handful of potato chips into the air, instructing her to fetch them. With enthusiasm, she leapt after the treats, her motion almost playful. But beneath her playful exterior lurked a predator's instinct, an unpredictable element that could turn hostile at any moment. Then, something caught his eye, a gleaming object at the edge of the cliff. It was a dagger, perfect and deadly, lying discarded on the ground. Its hilt bore an emblem, the insignia of the Thunder Legion. This was no ordinary weapon. It was a relic from a notorious bandit organization renowned across all post-apocalyptic factions for their brutality. The Thunder Legion's members were relentless scavengers, survivors who thrived on theft, murder, arson, and chaos. Their presence in the wasteland was a mark of danger, and that dagger signified that the area was likely part of their territory. He bent down to pick it up cautiously, realizing its significance. It was an artifact of high rank, a symbol that might offer him leverage or protection. Around him, the remnants of stolen possessions cluttered the ground. Among these was a sack, seemingly identical to the one from which the girl zombie emerged. Inside it, he found another bag filled with crystals, sparkling, luminous stones. These crystals were the currency of the wasteland, the measure of worth in the fractured economy. He looked at the crystals, contemplating their value. Only crystals obtained from sales counted, according to the flying blue orb he carried, a digital entity that tracked his progress and resources. The girl zombie had devoured a portion of his merchandise, rendering a part of his efforts useless in terms of trade. He decided to accept this loss as payment for her feeding on his goods. His companion, the blue orb, called her a girl zombie, but Xiaolin, the survivor, insisted she was not quite the same. She had never been told to sell food to humans. He muttered bitterly, lamenting his unlucky system. He fell onto the ground in a tantrum, complaining about the worst system imaginable. A system that granted him missions but refused to validate his efforts. Despite completing his mission for the day, the system refused to acknowledge success, much to Xiaolin's frustration. The orb informed him that he'd fulfilled his daily objectives, but that his effort was not yet recognized. It urged him to improve his attributes, his skills, and hinted that he had gained an upgrade. Surprisingly, in his inventory he found a new item, a fryer of some kind, an unfamiliar device. He was not overly excited but decided to check his supplies. Within his inventory were basic ingredients, water, rice, meats, vegetables, everything necessary to cook and sell food in this wasteland. He asked the orb if there was anything else he could obtain. Typically, adventure game systems provided weapons, explosives, or self-defense tools, but his system was different, emphasizing sustenance rather than combat. He learned that his system's purpose was to ensure his survival through food preparation and trade. That meant his options for upgrades were limited. When he queried about experience points, he was disappointed to discover that they only granted him mundane items, such as toothpaste, toothbrushes, a pencil, and nothing more significant. It was a stark reminder that survival in the apocalypse would be a long, difficult journey, especially since his shelter could only defend against 3 attacks per day. He decided to focus on improving his defense skills for now. His resilience was gradually increasing as he allocated his points accordingly. Yet, after a while, he saw no noticeable change and wondered if the system even cared. The system's indifferent response left him feeling dismissed and powerless. It warned him that he had 24 hours to hire someone to run his store, offering a reward of 100 crystals. Fear and urgency flooded him. Finding 100 crystals on short notice was daunting enough, but the real challenge was locating someone willing to accept such an odd, perhaps dangerous, job under these perilous conditions. Just then, a note drifted to his feet. A flyer, seemingly mundane but loaded with significance. When he picked it up and read it, a flash of memory sparked. He remembered a small shop, an eatery that once existed on a nearby street, a place he often passed en route to school. It was run by a young woman who handed out flyers, trying to lure customers with her drinks. He wondered if she was still alive amidst the chaos. It would be intriguing to have her close, calling her teacher or master, as he often fantasized about having some semblance of normalcy. Determined, he moved his makeshift cart, the small hot dog stand, through the ruins, pushing it along the broken streets. As he navigated through the remains of the city, he suddenly noticed something unusual, an emergence from the rubble or perhaps a reappearance of the girl zombie. But wait, she was already gone. She had returned to her hideout as if nothing had happened. She looked around, visibly disappointed, before hurriedly leaving. He watched her disappear into the distance, puzzling whether the nearby street had ever been real or if she had simply paused to rest. With daylight fading, he finally reached the location of the girl's hideout, only to find the next room of his journey had begun. Approaching the door to the small restaurant, he hesitated a moment before pushing it open. But what awaited him inside was not what he expected. Instead of a bustling eatery, the interior was filled with zombies. Dozens of them, mindless and drooling. The sight froze him in place. He hesitated, nervously mumbling an apology for intruding before quietly shutting the door and retreating. Yet, seconds later, the panic took over as he sprinted away, desperate to escape the horror he had unwittingly stumbled into. In this post-apocalyptic world, danger lurked around every corner, and each step required cautious planning. Those who survived had to adapt quickly, learning not only to fight but also to find solace in the oddest of routines, and to glean hope from the smallest of victories. The wasteland was unforgiving, and only the most resourceful and resilient could carve out a future amid the shadows of desolation. In the chaotic world where survival hinges on quick reflexes and sharp wit, none could deny that persistence among the undead and the desperate is an unforgiving trait. Today, one of the largest zombies yet had launched itself at a small, reinforced shelter, determined to breach its defenses. Yet, the system designed to protect the shelter was no mere joke. It responded swiftly, repelling the monstrous attacker with a force that sent it flying backward, crashing onto the ground in a heap. However, the moment of victory was fleeting, for the zombie had already used one of its usual daily defenses, a fail-safe mechanism that had been activated in its rage and desperation. The creature's body twisted grotesquely on impact, its neck contorting in a spine-chilling manner, eyes flickering with primal fury. Without hesitation, it launched itself again, this time targeting the shelter's occupant's leg. Yet, thanks to lightning-fast reflexes, Shaolin was quick on his feet. With a precise and powerful kick to the zombie's head, he sent the creature hurtling through the air like a missile, crashing into the hood of an oncoming car with a thunderous impact. The zombie was flattened instantly, a mangled mess underneath the vehicle's weight. For a moment, Shaolin stood there, stunned by the sheer force he had somehow mustered. It seemed that the recent upgrade to his abilities, a small enhancement to his strength, had indeed made the difference. As he looked at the remains of the monstrous figure, a notification flashed in his mind. It was a message congratulating him on his first kill in this perilous new life. Along with it came a reward, an all-weather waterproof coat. He queried the system, curiosity piqued. Did a humble piece of equipment like that really have to be so basic? The system responded quietly, assuring him not to underestimate its potential. The waterproof coat, seemingly simple, could block any substance, even nuclear waste, allowing him to wade through hazardous environments without contamination. Shaolin hesitated, unsure whether to trust such a claim, but then realization dawned. He was completely encircled by zombies. In that moment of realization, he knew this was entirely his own fault for making so much noise in the chaos. Suddenly, a voice called out from inside the shelter, a muffled, inviting tone. "Hey kid, come in. It's warm inside, and there are a billion zombies outside closing in." With no other options and driven by instinct, Shaolin grabbed his shelter and sprinted toward the entrance. The door, despite appearing too narrow to fit everything inside, somehow opened wide enough to admit him. Once inside, he was grateful for the shelter's protection, albeit slightly surprised at how easily he had managed to escape the chaos. Inside, a young girl looked at him with a mixture of relief and curiosity. "Thanks for saving me," she said softly, a genuine smile touching her face. I never thought I'd find someone here. Shaolin, still catching his breath, nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. The girl hesitated for a moment before asking, "But how do you even know me?" Shaolin hesitated, then gave a vague, ambiguous answer. "You're that high school student who used to pass by here," he said. "The one who always tried to get me to taste her drinks." She still seemed confused but quickly deduced that there was more to the story. She was smart enough to realize that Shaolin's familiarity was not accidental. She thought to herself, there's no way he could remember someone like me, questioning whether he was just handsome enough to leave an impression. Yet, despite her doubts, she decided to play along, forcing a casual smile. "Oh, right," she said. "You're the guy who loves basketball. I almost forgot." Shaolin was about to correct her, to clarify that he was not the same person she remembered. But before he could speak, she leaned in closer and pressed two large, soft spheres against his chest. The gentle pressure made him forget what he intended to say. Instead, he found himself asking her name. "She's Aishin," she replied softly. Without warning, Shaolin's eyes softened, and he called her little sister, unable to resist the warm feeling that these words evoked. Suddenly, this strange boy was overwhelmed by an unfamiliar emotion, a tingling sense of affection because someone had called him brother. It was the first time in his life any simple phrase like that sparked such a reaction, and he felt tears welling up uncontrollably. Meanwhile, the girl watched him with curiosity, puzzled by his emotional display. In the midst of the quiet, a metal can rolled across the floor. Shaolin turned his head, perplexed, and reached down to pick it up. His expression was one of confusion, questioning why he felt so disoriented. Unexpectedly, as he touched the can, he realized it was actually a part of his belongings, his supplies. The girl, noticing his puzzled stance, suddenly asked if he was searching for something, her gaze fixed intently on the object in his hand. To her astonishment, she saw that what he held was a bag of flour. Her eyes widened. "That's mine," she said softly. "How did it get in your hands?" she asked sharply, suspicion creeping into her voice. Shaolin replied calmly, "I just took it when you nearly tripped. It's a really good cooking knife, honestly. I thought you wouldn't mind, since I was preparing food." She looked at him, arms crossed, a mixture of doubt and curiosity. Her mind raced. Somehow, it seemed as if everything in his possession was inexplicably vanishing or disappearing at his touch. The flour bag, the knife, all seemed unexplainable. She wondered, was he truly just an ordinary guy? Or was there something more mysterious about him? Determined to deal with the confusion, she decided she had to be rid of him, or at least take control of the situation. She thought to herself that whatever he was doing, it was too unpredictable to trust. Her patience was wearing thin, and she was contemplating ways to free herself from his influence. As she regarded him with suspicion, her gaze lingered on the remaining items in his possession. Suddenly, Shaolin reached out and held the flour bag up. "Is this what you're looking for?" he asked casually. Her eyes snapped to his, and she saw her bag of flour, now in his hands. Her brow furrowed. "That's mine," she repeated sharply. He smiled faintly, holding the bag gently. "I only took it when you almost lost your balance," he explained. "It's a good kitchen knife, and I promise I wasn't trying to steal it. I was just trying to help." She looked at him skeptically, noting the strange calmness in his demeanor. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she debated whether he was truly trustworthy. Her nerves tingled, and she wondered how someone like him could be so alert and unpredictable, especially in a world turned upside down. "I don't mean to offend," she said slowly, "but you have to understand how dangerous it is for someone like me to be here. Living in this chaos, surviving here, requires constant vigilance. All I want is to get through this alive, and I'd appreciate it if you kept your hands off my supplies." Shaolin nodded, a serious expression on his face. "Of course," he said quietly. "I respect that." Then, with a sudden change of tone, he added, "But I can show you how to use what you have. Maybe it will help you survive better." She blinked, surprised by his unexpected offer. For a moment, she considered accepting. Perhaps the strange kid could teach her something useful. Yet, a part of her was still wary, a feeling that in a world where trust was rare, most surprises were dangerous. As they continued to exchange words, the atmosphere grew tense. Shaolin reached for a small, makeshift spear he carried, examining it carefully. The girl tensed, wondering what he was planning next. Without warning, he suddenly lifted his hand and formed a small, precise gesture. An ominous energy crackled around him, and then, unexpectedly, he declared his intention to fight against any threat that dared challenge them. His voice firm, he proclaimed that he would protect her, no matter what odds they faced. The girl watched, somewhat surprised, as Shaolin adopted a combative stance. In the heat of the moment, he launched a fiery kick, enveloped in blue flames, aiming directly at her. Her eyes widened in alarm, but before she could react, he produced a tiny spray of pepper spray, the tiny cloud billowing forth to deter her. In an instant, her expression changed from surprise to utter confusion and perhaps even a little irritation. She suddenly looked at him, fully aware that she appeared like a complete fool. She flopped onto the ground, clutching her side while glancing up at him with a blend of annoyance and bewilderment. "Seems like you can't handle spicy stuff," Shaolin chuckled softly, lowering his arm. "But don't worry. I always adapt to my clients' tastes," he added with a playful grin, glancing around. "Now, let's see what I can do to make this situation a little better." He took on a look of a master chef, ready to handle any ingredient, be it flame, spice, or danger. His expression was serious, yet his movements suggested confidence that bordered on arrogance. He seemed to genuinely want to help in his own peculiar way, but not in the way one might expect. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The ground trembled slightly, and the door burst open. Two young children, breathless and wide-eyed, burst into the room, screaming at the top of their lungs, demanding that the strange boy leave her alone. Their voices were trembling with fear and urgency. Shaolin looked at them, puzzled, unsure of what to do next. The children's sudden appearance added a new layer of chaos to an already tense situation. In the murky shadows of a crumbling world, where survival depended on cunning and resilience, there existed a fragment of hope, an isolated shelter that promised refuge amid chaos. Inside this fragile sanctuary, a small group of survivors endeavored to cling to life, battling not only external threats but also the darkness lurking within their own minds. Among them, a young girl named Ain stood as a beacon of clarity and strength, her presence a subtle reminder of what it meant to keep one's humanity intact. On a bleak day that had started no differently than any other, a strange calm settled over the small encampment. The initial serenity was abruptly shattered by the arrival of a boy, his face etched with worry and urgency. He hurried through the makeshift corridors, his voice trembling yet resolute, telling a girl, whose features bore the trace of premature maturity, that there was no need to fear. Help was on its way. Rescue was imminent. His words, however reassuring, did little to quell the creeping dread that had begun to seep into everyone's hearts. Suddenly, like a gust of violent wind, a figure named Shaolin appeared, swift and decisive. Without hesitation, he scooped up the boy and the girl alike, carrying them away from the anxious crowd. His stern voice cut through the air, commanding the small troublemakers to cease their commotion. "Stop causing trouble, or you'll only make things worse," he warned sharply. The young ones, overwhelmed and unruly, reluctantly obeyed, knowing their antics would no longer be tolerated. Meanwhile, the girl, whose cheeks bore the marks of seasoned life, rose to her full height, a look of fierce determination on her face. Raising her voice, she demanded that Shaolin release the children immediately. If there was any issue to resolve, it was with her, not them. In response, Shaolin, with a wry twist of his lips, hurled the children at her. "Here, catch," he said bluntly, as they tumbled into her arms, collapsing to the ground in a heap, dazed and confused. Their small bodies lay sprawled and vulnerable, emblematic of the chaos around them. Later, As the dust settled and silence returned, the girl discovered a hidden stash of food that the group had accumulated over time. Her keen eyes quickly noticed details that contradicted her prior assumptions. She inspected the cans, once believed to be untouched for days, and found remnants of old meals still inside. Her suspicion deepened. She recalled previous encounters and was now convinced that someone had deceived her long before her arrival. Her voice, steady yet tinged with suspicion, revealed her conviction. She claimed never to have failed in her assessments, insisting she kept precise track of everything. Her curiosity prompted her to demand answers. How had the traitor uncovered her secrets so quickly? Yet Shaolin responded with a grim, straightforward comment. Anyone who fell for a lie was simply foolish. You could still see the evidence, residual food inside the cans, which made no sense for someone who hadn't eaten in 5 days. And bloodstains covered the floor, clear signs of violence. Someone had been murdered there, and they were lucky not to be next. His words cut sharp and cold, painting a picture of brutal survival amid treachery. The children, listening with wide eyes, argued that their only goal was to eliminate malicious individuals like him, those who harbored ill intentions toward a girl named Ain. They asserted that her intentions were pure, that she simply sought safety and companionship, and that his accusations were unfounded. Yet, as these words were exchanged, Ain revealed her own perspective. She explained that, in the chaos of the apocalypse, everyone did whatever was necessary to ensure their survival. She argued that her actions, even if harsh, were justified by the brutal reality they faced. Her words seemed to resonate with the others, who nodded in agreement, perhaps convinced by her reasoning. Or perhaps they merely accepted her perspective to avoid conflict. Meanwhile, Shaolin, with an expression tinged with a cold irony, admitted that if survival required cruelty, then he would have no qualms about doing what was needed. If that's the case, he said, then you can't blame me for doing as I please anymore. A wave of fear spread among the assembly. Everyone gazed at him with a mixture of apprehension and shock. Ain, voice firm and unwavering, questioned his intentions. She demanded to know what he was planning to do next. His response was eerily calm. It's been a long time since I've tasted fresh meat. Today is the day. His words sent a ripple of panic through the group. The children, terrified, started to tremble uncontrollably, fearing that they would soon be consumed. Shaolin's sinister smile widened as he reveled in their fear. The children desperately searched for alternatives, some arguing that if anyone should be sacrificed, it should be her, the girl with the seemingly pure heart. Others insisted that the flesh of children was far more tender and preferable to that of adults, advocating that they prepare the young to be eaten. A cruel debate ensued, dividing the group into factions, each advocating for their own grim solution. Amidst this chaos, a new tension emerged. Shaolin's demeanor shifted to irritation, recognizing that everyone was suddenly acting noble, trying to paint him as the villain. His frustration grew as they attempted to impose morality on an immoral reality. He looked on with disdain as they cowered, unable to grasp the depths of his resolve. Suddenly, a small girl coughed violently, blood spewing from her mouth. Her brother immediately called out to her with concern, but before anyone could intervene, the girl's condition worsened rapidly. Ain's voice cut through the mounting panic, calling him a monster for strangling her so tightly that she could barely breathe. The boy, distressed, looked to Shaolin, expecting justice or explanation. Shaolin, however, merely shrugged dismissively, commenting that his little trick, strangling her briefly to make her release the ropes, had not worked. The girl continued coughing violently, blood splattering onto the floor. Her screams of distress struck a chord of desperation among everyone present. Despite this, Xing, an older figure among them, surprisingly praised Shaolin's acting skills, acknowledging the brutal display as surprisingly convincing. The others, however, remained convinced that the girl, dangerously weakened, might succumb soon if her condition were not addressed. In response, Shaolin finally relented, ordering his system to scan her vital signs. The device's cold, clinical calculations revealed a grave prognosis. a severe infection spreading through her body, with no chance of survival unless immediate treatment was administered. The prognosis was grim. Her time left was less than 3 days. Blood continued to pour from her, and her breathing grew shallow. Hearing this, Ain acted swiftly. Her resolve hardened as she moved to aid the girl. Her 2 companions hurried to help, gently laying her on the ground. Yet, despite their efforts, her condition appeared to worsen. It was clear that her wounds bore the marks of a bullet hole. A surge of anger and horror flooded through the group. Who could have been so cruel? The girl's tormentor, the blonde-haired girl who had earlier expressed concern, now spoke with conviction. She explained that the attack had been carried out by the Legion of Thunder, a sinister faction that had come into existence before everything fell apart. Her words transported the group into a grim narrative of past atrocities. She recounted that once, before the collapse of civilization, one of her mothers, a regular customer at a certain shop in the town, had become entangled in the chaos. The woman, steeped in stories of apocalyptic movies, had reacted instinctively when witnessing a bite. She had sealed the store with a heavy lock, trying to protect what remained inside. The group had initially united in hope, waiting for rescue or salvation to arrive. Days stretched into weeks, food supplies dwindled, and the veneer of civilization eroded. As resources diminished, tensions ran high. Some argued that the girl, being small, did not need as much food as an adult. Others insisted that she was ill and required nourishment to survive. Disagreements grew and accusations flew. It was then that a man, driven by greed or perhaps desperation, declared that giving the girl food was pointless. She was already beyond hope, and any effort was mere waste. His callousness was met with hostility. A small demon child, perhaps embodying the chaos of their existence, bit the man. Chao Lin was about to retaliate with force, but then Ain intervened violently. She swept his legs, snatched the child from the air, and demanded to know why that man was stealing from others. The man, unperturbed, crushed a piece of bread in his hand, mocking the scene and claiming that the food was useless. His words echoed a brutal truth, that in this world, everyone faced death from starvation eventually. Ain turned her back on him, declaring that she owed him nothing. If he was so hungry, he could go out and search for his own food. It was clear to all that he was simply cowardly, preferring to pick fights with children rather than face the undead zombies who lurked outside. The others responded with disdain, saying that rational behavior was a distant memory under such circumstances. An old woman suddenly spoke up, her voice trembling but firm. She agreed that the hunger was dire, that Ain should provide more food, and that they must use all available supplies. She argued that in times like these, survival took precedence over morality, and the supplies should be used without hesitation, promising to pay her back once stability returned. Ain responded that the store was merely a tea shop. Its supplies were finite and limited. It was not an endless resource. The old woman pointed toward a closed door, demanding to know why it remained sealed. Ain explained it was a storage room, a simple closet with no food inside. But the woman, dressed oddly, a strange outfit resembling a banana, refused to accept this. She insisted on seeing what was behind the door, her tone insistent and impatient. Others joined her, voicing their desire to know what lay beyond. They demanded that the door be opened. The mother of the group tried to prevent them, reminding everyone that they had survived so far thanks to Ain's efforts. But her words fell on deaf ears as the others accused her of hiding something, of causing their predicament through her secrecy. Tensions heightened, and questions of trust and survival pressed down on everyone, pushing them to the brink as they faced a simple, yet daunting choice about uncovering any hidden supplies that could mean the difference between life and death. Amidst the chaos and destruction that had become daily life, a tense moment unfolded. Perhaps if they hadn't been locked inside that makeshift shelter, they would have already escaped, found a safe refuge, and received aid from the authorities. Yet, in their desperation, they remained hesitant, unsure if help would ever arrive. One of them, an older woman, looked at the group with concern in her eyes. She explained that if they were so eager to leave, they could do so right then and there. Still, nobody moved. Instead, they started murmuring among themselves, urging each other to ignore the foolhardy doubts and to force the door open. Their voices mixed with determination and frustration as they prepared to breach the barrier that kept them imprisoned. Laughter broke out from behind the makeshift fortress. A man, mocking and full of bravado, stood by, smirking as he watched the scene unfold. His voice was taunting as he announced that he was about to take everything they possessed. But just as the tension reached its peak, the door burst open suddenly, with a deafening crash. When the dust settled, the first thing he saw was a pile of dresses and skirts strewn across the floor. He faltered, confused by their peculiar appearance. They seemed excessively bold, overly revealing for such a bleak environment, and he couldn't understand why the garments appeared so provocative amid the chaos. Immediately, an elderly woman declared, almost with certainty, that the pieces of clothing now made perfect sense. She had recognized the signs, and her intuition told her that this girl was not what she appeared to be. Certainly not a decent woman. Her words dripped with suspicion and judgment, pushing the group further into mistrust. Another girl clung tightly to her companion, a young man who was trying to steady her. She directed her accusations firmly at Ain, claiming that he was attempting to seduce and manipulate all the men in their little enclave. The young man, defending his friend, insisted they were exaggerating, trying to dismiss the accusations as unfounded paranoia. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently. An explosion echoed through the shelter, causing dust and debris to fly. A figure approaching swiftly, clearly from the Legion of the Thunder, arrived on the scene, grim-faced and serious. He observed the chaos and voiced that the area seemed to be quite bustling, implying that resistance was futile. In the ensuing confusion, one of the foreign fighters stepped forward, introducing himself and demanding that they hand over their supplies. His tone was commanding and aggressive, leaving no room for negotiation. However, instead of complying, the man pointed directly at Ain, accusing him of hoarding all the provisions. At that moment, the others' focus shifted entirely to the food in Ain's possession. It quickly became evident that their priorities had shifted. They no longer cared about the supplies. What they truly wanted was the girl herself. The villains openly declared that their feast for the night would be devouring her. Fear overtook Ain as she ran, attempting to escape the dangerous crowd. Behind her, the fools who remained behind were swiftly caught. One of the intruders grabbed her by the shoulder, attempting to hold her back, cautioning her to slow down. She spun around violently, wielding a small knife with determination, nearly slicing him in half. Outraged, the man lost patience and spat out that it seemed she had a will to die. At that moment, a young girl, small and brave, leaped in front of her, taking a bullet meant for Ain. Panic erupted among everyone present. The leader of the group barked orders to his men, screaming for them to cease fire. They were on the verge of attracting a horde of zombies. But amid the chaos, the man fired again, killing a mother and shattering the fragile calm. His command was clear: to begin evacuating immediately, not leaving anything behind. Chaos descended upon the scene as the villains slaughtered the innocent shopkeeper. Just as they were about to execute the boy and the fair-haired girl, someone suddenly intercepted the shooting. It was a child, a young boy, who threw himself between the gunfire and his mother, pleading with her to stop. The man continued to strike her with his elbow, his rage bleeding into violence, insisting she would die if she kept resisting. Despite the assault, the mother uttered a faint whisper, entrusting her children to the care of Shao and Shaolin as her final act of love and sacrifice. With unwavering resolve, she turned and hurled herself out of the window. Her strength seemed beyond normal. How could a woman summon such power in the face of danger? Before she disappeared from sight, she wrapped her arms around her assailant's waist and yanked the pin from his grenade, causing it to detonate in the chaos that followed. Her heroic act triggered an explosion that rocked the entire area, transforming the scene into a terrifying battleground. The narrative cuts back to Ain's perspective, filled with guilt and remorse. He blames himself entirely for what had transpired. The weight of responsibility bears heavily on him as he reflects on the tragic events. Xiao, the young boy, looks up at him with tear-streaked face and offers a fragile hope. If he dies, he might finally reunite with his mother in another world. The boy desperately pleads for Ain not to leave him, revealing that he has already lost his mother and still yearns for a sister to fill that void. This emotional scene touches the hearts of others witnessing it. Even the system, which is designed to be emotionless and logical, begins to feel a hint of compassion. Ain, overwhelmed by the scene's brutality, tries to suppress his feelings and expresses his understanding. He acknowledges how difficult it must have been for her entire life, especially for Aishin, who was left to raise 2 children alone amid the harshness of an apocalypse that seemed endless. Driven by hope, he questions the system, seeking any way to obtain medicine to save the injured girl. The system responds that it is possible, but that their current storehouse lacks the necessary level to unlock the required functions. Ain's expression hardens as he hears this, recalling a certain pain, a moment when he had felt helpless. In a burst of frustration, Ain shouts out a curse, remembering that he had once expressed remorse for their suffering. He demands that the system provide a cure for the girl immediately. Yet, the system, bound by rules and limitations, refuses to make exceptions. His patience begins to wear thin, and he grows increasingly annoyed with the system's unyielding sense of justice. Just then, his food cart appears suddenly, announcing that though flexibility isn't an option, there might be a way to make the rules bend, something he had never considered before. What he did not know was that the food prepared at his stall possessed unique healing properties. Xiao, watching curiously, asks if such a thing could actually work. Surprised, Ain wonders aloud if he should have revealed this earlier. The idea seems promising, yet he hesitates, knowing the system's restrictions may complicate things. He takes a deep breath and decides to give it a shot, determined to try anything to help the girl. Examining his ingredients, he looks for inspiration and, suddenly, an idea strikes him. He cracks a single egg, mixing it into a batter, adds some seasoning, and then tosses it onto the fire. The 3 idiot companions observe this strange ritual, bewildered and curious about what Ain is cooking and why it smells so enticing amid the ruinous landscape. Ain, cautious yet intrigued, looks at what he's doing and asks the others what it could possibly be. He assures them that it isn't poisonous. It's a simple dish from his childhood, a waffle of egg that he loved since he was young. He invites the others to taste it, and one of them, the girl with a gentle smile, thanks him, remarking that it looks delicious. She takes a bite, and almost immediately, her face blossoms with delight, her eyes widening in amazement. She exclaims that it is incredibly sweet and flavorful, warmth spreading through her. Suddenly, she doubles over as her body relaxes, a stark contrast to her previous pain and distress. Ain notices this and quickly approaches, concern etched on his face. He places a hand on her forehead and detects her fever truly falling. Her skin cools beneath his touch, and her breathing steadies. Unexpectedly, her color improves, and a glow of vitality returns to her face. This moment surprises everyone, including the system, which had always been cold and unfeeling, by showing that the food's effects are real. It suggests that something within the dish interacts with the body in a way that promotes healing. The girl's eyes sparkle with newfound energy as she realizes she no longer feels any pain. Her expression is serene, and her body seems lighter, freer from the burden of her previous suffering. Ain observes her carefully, sensing that this simple act of preparing and consuming food may hold a solution he was unaware of. Curious, he asks what he might have added or done differently to cause such an amazing recovery, questioning if he has some kind of hidden skill or talent. The girl, with a joyful smile, admits she doesn't know. She guesses that perhaps Ain's secret is that he just needs to eat more of these treats to heal fully. She then teases that the next time they meet, he will have to charge for such magic. The scene becomes a mixture of relief and hope, an unexpected spark of life amid despair. Ain, considering the potential, offers a simple deal. If the food can cure her completely, she might be willing to stay and help him at his food stall, providing aid in exchange for safety. The small group of companions, still cautious, discusses this possibility, warning each other that such arrangements can be dangerous. They remind themselves of the real risks they face in this hostile environment, where trust is scarce and betrayal lurks behind every corner. Yet, the desire to find comfort and stability motivates them to consider even risky alliances. Ein, understanding their hesitation, emphasizes that he only wants to employ her, not harm her. He clarifies that he's searching for people who are willing to work with him in his makeshift shop. His words carry a sense of sincerity, and he hopes to establish a bond based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. The others watch with cautious eyes, contemplating whether to accept his offer, recognizing that amidst the chaos, even fragile trust might be a lifeline. In this brutal, unpredictable world, where survival often hinges on cleverness and resilience, Ein demonstrates an ability to adapt and find hope where it seems impossible. His resourcefulness, combined with unexpected kindness and ingenuity, creates a small island of warmth in a sea of darkness. The scene underscores that even in the worst circumstances, small acts of compassion and simple solutions can ignite a glimmer of hope for the future. The small gathering of survivors gathered in a tight circle, each of them silent and contemplative. Among them, a young boy's voice broke through the stillness, tentative yet resolute. He expressed uncertainty about the true nature of Shaolin's abilities, hinting that they had yet to understand the full extent of his powers. Ein, standing nearby, nodded thoughtfully, adding that as long as Shaolin was present, food wouldn't be a concern. He seemed confident that their needs would be fulfilled under his watch. This reassurance was enough for her to agree to work for Shaolin, but she stipulated a crucial condition. She could only commit if Shaolin, along with Shaolin, was allowed to accompany them. Curiously, the boy's name was Shaolin, spelled as one word, whereas the girl's name was separate Shaolin. To avoid confusion, the others agreed that from now on she would be called the girl, as this simplification would keep things clear. Shaolin already pondered whether this plan was wise. His instincts told him it might not be the best idea, especially considering what had unfolded moments earlier. Ein had immediately produced a contract from thin air, laying it out for everyone to see. It was a formal agreement that stipulated terms and conditions which they all had to adhere to. The document stated that they would work only from dawn to dusk, that they possessed a complete life insurance policy, and that other safety measures were in place. Shaolin's gaze fell on the contract. He couldn't help but chuckle inwardly at its phrasing. It seemed like they were trying to pay him just to use the restroom. A bizarre premise, yet somehow fitting in this strange new world. The girl nodded, affirming that if he intended to employ her, he would need to pay for her rights as well. Meanwhile, outside the makeshift shelter, a sudden voice echoed in the air, carried by the wind. It was the tempting aroma of something delicious wafting from the inside, drawing attention to the door. The ground trembled softly beneath their feet as the members of the Thunder Legion arrived, asserting that, as suspected, there was someone inside. One of the legionnaires reached out, pointing at the girl's waffle with a knowing smile, declaring that his nose had never lied before. The boy immediately stepped in front of her, claiming that the waffle belonged to his sister. In the next moment, the protagonist took a step forward himself, facing the intruders directly. The leader of the group asked him if he was willing to fight over this trivial matter. Shaolin, dispassionate, merely shrugged and said, "I am just a simple merchant in this post-apocalyptic world, but if you want waffles, I can make more." The man glanced at his boss, murmuring, "Well, I do want some waffles." The boss, confused, wondered why this random individual was selling waffles out of nowhere. Approaching Shaolin, he inquired about the price of the treats. For our protagonist, this was the perfect chance to fulfill his mission. He quickly pulled out a list indicating the menu and told the man that each waffle cost 10 crystals. The legionnaire raised an eyebrow and asked if they were made of gold or some precious material, to which Shaolin replied that, in this world, ingredients were the most expensive part of the process. The leader contemplated this and nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging that it made sense. "All right," he said. "We'll start by buying a few." One of the masked men warned that if the waffles tasted bad, they would not hesitate to give Shaolin a beating and destroy his small stall. The boss agreed, but at that moment, a gentle, warm hand touched his arm. Ein leaned in with a sweet smile and said softly, "Excuse my boss. He can be a bit grumpy sometimes." The man instantly blushed with embarrassment, wholly caught off guard by her comforting gesture. She then complimented his muscular chest, suggesting that he must have extensive experience battling zombies, a comment not missed by those standing nearby, who realized that she had just exposed the boss's one weak point. Ein then turned her attention to the others, instructing them to wait patiently while she prepared the food, winking at Shaolin in a teasing manner. Shaolin, in turn, began to reconsider whether hiring this demoness might actually be a wise decision. The food stall was now ready, and he set to the task of cooking. The crowd that had gathered was more than eager to finally taste something decent. When the waffles were prepared and handed out, everyone eagerly bit into their portions. The boss took a bite and immediately declared the waffles delicious. The aroma reminded him of his childhood, briefly causing him to forget the horrors they've endured since the world's collapse. At that moment, Shaolin received a pouch filled with various items, and the boss congratulated him, remarking that his skills were truly impressive. Curious about what else Shaolin could do, the boss inquired. Shaolin smiled, giving a thumbs up, and said casually, "Oh, I can do many things." The onlookers did not waste time, immediately beginning to shout requests. Fried chicken, hot dogs, spicy sauces, and all sorts of food. Others in the background started asking for Coca-Cola, candies, pancakes, fried treats, and whatever came to mind. The boss, seizing the opportunity, ordered 10 of each item without hesitation. Fortunately, Shaolin clarified that he would need a significant quantity of ingredients to fulfill all those orders. The boss waved dismissively, assuring him that he only needed to specify what he wanted, and they would gather everything. Shaolin was impressed by the confidence of this leader, who seemed more like a seasoned merchant surviving in the chaos of the apocalypse than a mere survivor. The two briefly discussed a long-term cooperation, with the boss offering him discounts in the future if he agreed. They exchanged glances, each contemplating their next move and what decisions would be best. Meanwhile, the other merchants mocked the boss openly, ridiculing him for still being on the brink of bankruptcy despite having a large group at his command. Shaolin didn't like hearing about financial struggles, especially about being practically broke, but he kept silent. The boss then claimed he had not left the area for a long time and was eager to see where he had ended up. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt nearby, and someone emerged, shouting that something was wrong. Wahoo and others from his group were injured, and an approaching contingent signaled fresh trouble. This group seemed to recognize one of their members, and intensity grew tense. The boss demanded to know immediately who had attacked Wahoo, his voice sharp with authority. As he looked closer, he identified 2 of the intruders, and realization dawned. They were the same individuals the protagonist had utterly destroyed previously. One of them, an idiot burned by an electric shock, stepped forward, cursing in frustration, claiming they were malicious street vendors, not worth much. The boy was clutching a rug, mumbling something about being the chosen, which prompted the boss's contemptuous chuckle. He ridiculed the boy's delusions, indicating that no one could take seriously someone claiming divine status based on nonsense. One of the men there nodded affirmatively, asserting that if there truly was an appointed chosen, a figure predestined for greatness, surely it had to be their boss. Their words hinted at a hierarchy, a reckoning that some believed in a prophecy or divine right. The confrontation was escalating, and tensions simmered beneath the surface, as each side prepared for what might come next in this unfolding, relentless chaos of survival. Pina suddenly stepped into the fray, his voice steady but firm. "We believed we shared the same thoughts, until that damn child attacked us," he admitted, frustration lining his tone. "Every strike we threw was met with relentless counterattacks." At that moment, the leader and another man acknowledged something astonishing. They had never encountered a skill quite like that before. Yet Ein's memory was crystal clear. They had struck her with a very similar attack before, the moment she was stabbed. She vividly recalled how she had been flung through the air, the pain sharp and searing, her mind racing as she attempted to process the onslaught. Glancing back, she wondered if this entire chaos was orchestrated by that cursed brat. Her suspicion deepened as she saw the boy slipping away slowly, almost casually, and a dark premonition settled within her. The boss declared in a voice of cold finality that anyone foolish enough to challenge him or his legion would pay with their life. His words sent tremors through the gathered crew, freezing them in place with fear. Murmurs erupted. Could this man really be Lei Hong? The very name sent shivers down their spines. A legend known for ruthless dominance. Ayn stepped closer to the man and demanded confirmation. Was he truly Lei Hong, the leader of this formidable legion? The men nearby nodded eagerly, their faces a mixture of awe and dread. They confirmed that everyone was always surprised when they learned his true identity. The man, with a sly smile, laughed softly and said that the reason for their shock was simply because of the delicious waffles they had made earlier. He added that if anyone ever got into trouble, they could just call him, though his words sounded more like a threat. Meanwhile, the children fumed outside, furious at the implications of this man leading their enemies. They claimed that he was the one responsible for murdering her mother, Lei Hong. Calmly, Lei Hong lifted the two children and asked them what they were talking about. Their words made no sense to him. His right-hand man, Damaska, nodded in agreement, asserting that even though they were bandits, they never hurt women or children. But Ayn didn't believe him immediately. Without hesitation, she unleashed a fiery kick at Damaska, shouting that she knew he was lying. Her attack was swift and precise, a blazing display that prompted a roar of excitement from the rest of the gang, eager for a tense and entertaining confrontation. Lei Hong, in contrast, appeared to hesitate, indicating that he did not truly want to fight a woman. Instead, he cast a wary eye at Ayn, contemplating her resolve. Behind her, a girl with striking blue hair sighed softly, realizing that one day her boss would have to overcome that psychological barrier preventing him from striking a woman directly. As Ayn narrowly dodged a beautiful kick, layers of tension filled the air. Meanwhile, from a vantage point high above, something strange observed the scene. Not a person, but a grotesque tentacle, slimy and unwelcome, twisting and crawling in the shadows. The young man watching this was stunned to realize that he was the protagonist in this story, a realization that was almost surreal. His enemies, however, were so engrossed in their brawling that they scarcely noticed him. It was at this moment that he remembered he had only 2 doses of protection left for the day, the last remaining chances to stay safe amid the chaos. The importance of caution suddenly struck him with clarity. Just then, the old man and the figure in the guise of a pedestrian pointed directly at him, shouting that he was the fool. The very second they did, Lei Hong, exhausted from the relentless game, grabbed Aishin by the ankle and hurled her toward one of his men. He then approached our young hero, accusing him of having struck his subordinates and stolen crystals from him. Feeling uneasy, the boy insisted that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. But the other men were not inclined to let him off easily. They shouted that he was the villain. They said he had attacked them, robbed them, and even caused the loss of their cargo. The children, proud and defiant, confirmed that it was indeed him, arguing that he had defeated all of them, showing courage and strength. Aishin sneered and remarked that the boy was braver than she had thought, implying that he would even dare to strike a woman. Her words, ambiguous as they were, seemed to provoke Lei Hong, lighting a fire of rage in his eyes. Sparks of fury seemed to ignite within him as he simmered with anger. He quickly commanded everyone to remain silent before things escalated further, warning that he had had enough of this chaos. Without warning, he struck the ground with a punch, causing the entire area to tremble and crack. Dust and debris filled the air as the entire landscape seemed to crumble. When the dust settled, Lei Hong was standing motionless amid the haze, an ominous silence surrounding him. Ayn, stunned, watched in disbelief. This man had shattered the concrete with his bare hands, reducing the ground to rubble. The children panicked, their fear evident. They wondered anxiously whether their young ally was safe. The masked figure sighed, remarking that people with abilities were truly incredible, especially the leader, since he possessed the most powerful skill of all. Our young hero remained upright and unscathed, contemplating how close he had been to disaster. If Lei Hong's punch had hit him squarely, he might have been turned into nothing more than dust. Lei Hong immediately went into a combat mode, unleashing rapid combos that would make anyone dizzy. But our hero was agile, skillfully evading every strike, slipping past Lei Hong's blows with quick, calculated movements. Lei Hong, frustrated, finally demanded to know how this boy dared to hit a woman, delivering a mighty punch to his arm and sending him sprawling backwards. The boy, already bleeding from the nose, coughed up blood but refused to give in. Impressively, Lei Hong seemed unaffected by the attack. Unlike others, he did not disintegrate or falter upon contact. Instead, he pressed on, advancing steadily toward our hero, who remained on guard but aware that the fight was far from over. The children, meanwhile, watched helplessly, painfully aware that their comrade was at a severe disadvantage. They knew that their ally had little chance against such a formidable opponent. Meanwhile, Ain was consumed with thoughts. She pondered that if Shaolin were to die, she and the children would be left with nothing but the remnants of the food cart. But honestly, she understood that more likely than not, they'd lose everything, and the gang would take all they had. Shaolin, murmuring to herself, criticized the bandits, calling them nothing more than thugs, brutes who were only good at bullying. But Lei Hong, listening to her, chuckled quietly and dismissed her words as mere noise. He declared that their ally was pathetic, and that his own group had already abandoned him. Suddenly, with a thunderous crash, another blow sent him crashing against a wall. His stomach was fully exposed and turning red. He clearly knew that dodging was no longer an option. The opponent was simply too fast, too relentless. The only way to win was to use that particular trick, the one that relied on reaching maximum strength before reflecting the force back. He took a deep breath and began running straight toward Lei Hong, who sneered mockingly, finally acknowledging his opponent's courage. "Now you act like a man," Lei Hong spat, "and you'll die like one." Just as the punch was about to land, Shaolin slipped underneath his arm, weaving between his legs. For a moment, it seemed as if she had briefly managed to disarm him, perhaps even pulled down his pants, leaving him momentarily vulnerable, before everything took a turn in an unexpected direction. The moment had suddenly gone completely silent. The figure stood frozen amidst the chaos, filled with a mixture of embarrassment and confusion. Everyone's gazes fixated on the unexpected scene unfolding before them. Why would that brat do something so reckless? No one could grasp the reasoning behind his audacious move. The others looked on with bewilderment, unsure whether to feel angry, surprised, or simply perplexed. Suddenly, from the crowd, one of the onlookers burst into uncontrollable laughter, his booming chuckles echoing through the tense air. The entire plan our young hero had devised to provoke maximum outrage had undeniably succeeded. The veins on Lei Hong's face swelled visibly, his cheeks flushed with rage, his body tensed as if ready to burst. In his fury, he lunged forward, shouting threatening curses at Shaolin, vowing that this time he would make her pay for her insolence. Shaolin, however, had her eyes fixated on something small and shiny lying motionless on the ground near her feet. A tiny knife, partly buried in the dirt. Her gaze sharpened, and she was about to make a move when the absurd happened. With a sudden swing of her shoulder, she accidentally made contact with one of the masked men, causing him to lose grip on Aishin, who was dangling from his leg. In that flash of chaos, Shaolin seized the opportunity, snatching the small blade and shouting fiercely that she would avenge her mother's memory. The children, witnessing this ferocious defiance, yelled frantically, warning her to be cautious as the masked attacker pulled out a firearm. The man aimed his gun at the gang leader, fiercely commanding him to step back. Shaolin, who had been quietly observing, exploded with rage, condemning the scoundrels outright. "You cowardly bastards! Don't you know you shouldn't hit women or children?" he roared. With limited choices and no other options, he threw his food cart as a shield in front of the young girl, trying to protect her from the gunfire. The bullet sliced through the air but was thwarted by the makeshift barrier. Yet, the situation took a darker turn. Lei Hong suddenly realized that he had to brace himself for the impending blow from the furious Lei Hong. His instincts screamed that this was the end of his role as the hero, as his life was about to reach its abrupt conclusion. Children, as they say, are an unforgiving curse, an ill omen that could turn the tide of any conflict and ensure chaos reigned supreme. At that critical moment, just as Lei Hong's face was about to be pummeled into a pulp, an enormous explosion erupted from inside the shop. Through a cloud of smoke, a figure emerged, our ever-beautiful, undead heroine, looking as dazzling as ever. She was likely starving, judging by her appearance, and her presence instantly altered the battlefield's atmosphere. The masked assailants noticed her arrival. Before they could react, she launched herself into the fray with extraordinary agility and precision. A brutal kick connected directly with Lei Hong's face, causing him to stagger backward, reeling from the force of the strike. He sniffed the air, stunned, utterly disoriented. Meanwhile, she fixed her gaze directly upon him, gripping a dangerous-looking object in her hands. It was clear that this particular predator was unable to resist her formidable presence. In that split second, the young man recognized her instantly. Without hesitation, he was about to shout a warning when she struck him with an impressive and powerful punch, sending him flying. He crashed into the wall behind him with enough force to create a cloud of dust and smoke. The gang, witnessing her daring assault, froze in shock. The looks on their faces revealed that they instantly realized she was the same woman they had previously captured and humiliated. Terror seized the group's hearts. They swiftly drew their weapons, most notably a crossfire of firearms, and started shooting at her, but she evaded every single shot with remarkable grace and agility. It was evident that a mere normal zombie could not perform such feats. They had no choice but to proceed cautiously. She landed gracefully on the food stall maintained by our young hero, just as one of the masked figures hurled an axe in her direction. In anguish, Xiaoling shouted at everyone to keep fighting and to focus on defending their precious stall. She pushed her way forward, shoving the attacker aside to shield the shop from incoming harm, risking herself to save the food and the young girl. The attackers, losing patience, were growing increasingly desperate. One of them pulled out a bazooka, and this time there was no way to avoid the incoming missile. Xiaoling begged them not to fire such a destructive weapon at their humble storefront, but her pleas came too late. The missile had already been launched. The explosion rocked the shop with thunderous force. The zombie girl, however, remained unaffected, watching the projectile approach with a bored expression. She could have easily dodged it, but instead, she chose to drop to the ground, shielding the food stall with her body, causing the shot to narrowly miss its target. Our young hero immediately praised her for the quick thinking, saying she had done well. Before he could fully process the chaos, another explosion tore through the shop, causing Lei Hong to stumble from the debris-strewn wreckage. Seething with anger, he declared that, regardless of her gender, he would not allow her to get away with this. Yet, another explosion caused the entire shop to collapse further, and a heavy wooden beam fell directly onto Lei Hong's head. The attackers looked at each other, realizing that their boss was quickly having a very bad day. The leader turned toward the man wielding the bazooka, shouting for him to put an end to this madness once and for all. The man, looking sheepish, apologized, claiming his target was too swift. Lei Hong, exhausted and furious beyond reason, ordered his henchmen to finish what they had started. Suddenly, a figure stepped forward, with a cocky grin, claiming he would turn the enemies into Swiss cheese. Despite the chaos around him, the zombie girl, ever so graceful and composed, remained elusive and untouchable. How could anyone, let alone this twisted family and their misguided crew, still be alive amid such mayhem? Xiaoling quickly realized that they had to take advantage of the chaos, using the confusion as an opportunity to escape before the zombies' wrath, or the gang's fury, turned their situation even worse. Deep down, our young hero found himself wishing that the zombie would emerge victorious and devour them all. As she continued dodging bullet after bullet with impeccable skill, a new thought crossed his mind, an unsettling hope that she would come out on top and end this nightmare once and for all. Suddenly, he caught sight of her slipping away, clutching the food supply and disappearing into the chaos. Without wasting a second, he grabbed a length of scrap metal lying nearby and hurled it into the air. The attacker in the striped outfit was disarmed immediately. However, he had a new weapon, an AI-powered gun, that kept firing indiscriminately in all directions, creating mayhem and disorder. The chaos made it impossible for our hero to enjoy any respite. Now, entangled in what seemed like a family of enemies, he had to figure out how to protect everyone and himself all at once. That weapon, an AI-controlled contraption, hovered ominously, targeting indiscriminately. After exhausting its ammunition, the device finally fell silent, collapsing to the ground, universe of fear and confusion reigning for a moment. Even the opposition appeared to have been frightened by the unknown entity. Everyone was left wondering about the whereabouts of the zombie girl, who had vanished into the shadows. Our young hero, hiding behind his stall, shared that same question. He was just about to suggest they should flee when she suddenly appeared right there, out of nowhere. The piece of tactical equipment, designed to prevent pleasing imagery or fan service, grabbed at her skirt and struck her with a quick punch. Then, in a rush of panic, our young hero bolted, fleeing with the others in a desperate attempt to escape the scene. Meanwhile, above the chaos, an ominous tentacled monster watched the fleeing group. It seemed to sense something, perhaps recognizing the human figure as a threat, or maybe as prey. Without warning, the creature leapt with terrifying ferocity, screams of terror echoing through the air as it lunged at the young man. He was caught off guard and could only brace himself as the tentacle shot towards him with lethal intent. The zombie girl, realizing she wouldn't make it in time to stop the attack, threw herself bravely into the path of the oncoming tentacle. It was a heroic act, selfless and courageous, even as a sense of dread seeped into her eyes. Unfortunately, her effort was not enough. The tentacle struck her, slamming her against a wall with tremendous force. The giant octopus, with tentacles as thick as tree trunks, descended from the ceiling, occupying the entire space. This monstrous creature was far larger and more menacing than anyone had anticipated. Its enormous body towered over the scene, squeezing into every corner of what was supposed to be a modest shop. With a shuddering noise, the structure itself seemed to creak under the weight of the beast. After a moment of stunned silence, everyone wondered aloud. How was it still standing? How could this tiny shop endure such an outbreak of chaos, teetering on the verge of collapse under the weight of such horror? Once upon a time, in a desolate and dangerous wasteland, there existed a sprawling area teeming with monstrous creatures and peril at every turn. Among these beasts, there was one that defied all expectations. A creature that had grown to an enormous size, surpassing even the largest animals known to man. It was colossal, its dimensions comparable to that of a football pitch, a true titan among monsters. The locals and explorers alike whispered tales of its emergence, warning of its destructive potential and unpredictable nature. One day, a group of brave adventurers ventured into this treacherous zone, hoping to uncover its secrets or perhaps encounter something extraordinary. As they moved cautiously through the ruins, they suddenly spotted the giant beast from afar. Its immense body was motionless, yet it radiated a palpable sense of menace. The creature's skin was rough and covered in strange, iridescent scales that shimmered even in the dimmest light. Lejon, the group's seasoned fighter, was the first to observe the creature. His eyes widened in disbelief as he exclaimed, "That thing is huge! It's massive, bigger than a football field." His voice trembled slightly, revealing both awe and apprehension. The others gathered around, their faces grim as they studied the creature's form. It was evident that this was no ordinary beast. It appeared to be a mutant, a result of strange experiments gone wrong, or perhaps a consequence of the toxic environment they were exploring. The group instinctively reached for their weapons, readying their crossbows and automatic rifles. The air grew tense as they prepared to attack, believing that brute force might be the only option left. But as the first shots rang out, it became painfully obvious that conventional firearms were useless against this behemoth. The creature's hide was impervious. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly off its scales, and quick movements merely caused it to sidestep or dodge with uncanny agility for such a massive creature. The scene quickly devolved into chaos. In the confusion, a young girl, part of the group, was struck violently against a nearby wall. Her small frame was no match for the force of the impact, and she shattered like a fragile porcelain doll. Blood and fragments of plastic mimicking flesh splattered across the walls as her body crumpled to the ground. Her abdomen was crushed. She lost consciousness immediately, unconscious but having done her best to shield her companions. Aish, one of the leaders, cursed under his breath. "She did it to protect our boy," he murmured, eyes dark with grief and frustration. Yet, the boy in question, whose name was Xiaolin, didn't understand. The sacrifice seemed pointless to him. Why would she risk her life so utterly? His mind was clouded with questions, and he struggled to comprehend the depth of her loyalty. Reaching into his small bag, Xiaolin's fingers closed around a familiar object, one of the snacks she had given him earlier, the same one he had used to lure her into the perilous lava zone in a misguided attempt at either rescue or farewell. It was the very snack that had nearly sealed her doom. Yet, somehow, he had kept it all this time, stowing it away as a memento of her sacrifice. Memories flooded Xiaolin's mind, reminding him of that girl from the legend of the homunculus, an entity created through strange arts, often silent and overly kind, yet possessing an innocence that defied the chaos around her. She never spoke much. Her actions were always gentle, almost as if her own suffering didn't matter. Her kindness was her strength, but also her vulnerability. Meanwhile, the creature continued its relentless assault, and the group found themselves at a crossroads. The question arose, did zombies or mutants even experience pain? And if so, was the girl destined to die here, her wounds irreparable? The discussion was cut short when Zeo, another member of the team, demanded answers from the system governing their survival, their interface that monitored and advised them. Zeo questioned the system fiercely. Can we even help her? Is there any way to save her? Or is this her end? The system, cold and logical, responded that only humans could be healed with the current resources. To heal creatures like the girl, Xiaolin would need to upgrade his base, his shop, further. It specified that in order to get the necessary upgrade, he must acquire a level 2 crystal within the next 24 hours. These crystals were rare, highly coveted items, especially since a single level 2 crystal was equivalent in value to 100 level 1 crystals. Obsolete to many, but invaluable to those fighting to survive. The most straightforward method to acquire such a crystal was to confront and kill a mutant. And surprise, surprise, there was one directly in front of Xiaolin and his companions. With their seemingly infinite ammunition, they continued firing at the creature, hoping to weaken or distract it. Nonetheless, it quickly became evident that the bullets weren't causing any damage. The creature's thick hide rendered their gunfire futile, and none of the projectiles pierced through the tough scales. Realizing the limitations of guns, the team's last resort was to bring out the Bascua, a powerful rocket launcher. They aimed directly at the mutant, releasing a projectile meant to obliterate it. The monster responded swiftly, impeding the attack with a massive tentacle, blocking the rocket with a single swipe. The situation grew tense as the defender cheered prematurely, convinced they'd succeeded. But all at once, the creature showcased its horrifying resilience. Instead of being damaged, it seemed to have completely absorbed the impact, even seemingly swallowing the missile whole. The creature's body, covered in mucus and slime, responded bizarrely to the attack. The team's members watched in shock, confused how a creature could swallow a rocket, much less remain unscathed. One of the team members, with stripes on his shirt, hurriedly tried to retreat, but it was too late. Suddenly, a tentacle descended rapidly, smashing one of the team members flat against the ground, splattering the debris and the soldier, engulfed in green, probably corrosive, venom. The acrid liquid spilled everywhere, and panic set in as they scrambled for cover. Some began grabbing debris, hurling it at the monster or hiding behind broken walls in an attempt to avoid the creature's deadly tentacles and venom. Amidst the chaos, another tentacle swooped down, crushing beneath it a team member who had been desperately trying to escape. The corrosive substance oozed through the cracks, threatening to melt anything it touched. The team members pleaded with their leader, begging him to abandon them. They couldn't afford to die trying to save everyone, especially not in such a hopeless scenario. But the leader refused to give up. He held onto a concrete slab, trying to buy time for his comrades. His feet sank into the earth as the tentacle approached, and with a swift, powerful movement, it tore through the slab with brutal efficiency. The battle was at its climax, and the tension grew thick. In the midst of it all, Xiaolin watched anxiously, hoping for a moment of redemption. He observed his surroundings carefully, looking for a way to turn the tide. Suddenly, from nowhere, a figure emerged, completely covered in a waterproof cloak, reminiscent of a certain legendary captain. This was Gao Xiaolin, a brave and resourceful individual with an uncanny ability to adapt to the chaos. The young hero, displaying remarkable agility, began scaling the creature's tentacles. His actions seemed reckless to the others, yet Xiaolin could see that he possessed some hidden power. Even Lei Hong, one of the seasoned fighters, remarked that it was strange. They couldn't sense any energy from Xiaolin's strange movements. It was as if the boy was channeling some unknown force. As the tentacle nearly swung at him, Xiaolin deftly dodged, then launched a peculiar attack, something resembling telekinesis or water-based magic. In an instant, he found himself face to face with the creature's gaping maw, clutching a sharp knife. With a swift and precise movement, Xiaolin stabbed the blade into the creature's mouth, right into a lodged Bascua missile. Sparks flashed as the weapon ignited upon impact. The creature writhed and screeched, releasing a plume of smoke and ink like ink. The explosion was deafening, filling the air with debris and chaos. All that remained of the once monstrous beast was a mangled, scorched carcass. The team watched in awe as the creature was finally defeated, a victory hard won amidst the chaos. Xiaolin stood drenched in sweat and rain, grateful for his makeshift waterproof cloak, which had shielded him from the explosion's fury. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The object systems had proven useful once again, providing him with gear that had made a tangible difference. He dreamed quietly about obtaining more items like that, eager to become better equipped for what lay ahead. His eyes then turned to the defeated creature's remains as he approached cautiously. Carefully, he retrieved the coveted level 2 crystal, knowing that its power would serve him well. It was more than just a glowing gem. It represented hope and the potential to upgrade his abilities and equipment. Alongside the crystal, Xiaolin received a strange book, an apocalypse recipes manual, that promised to unlock new skills and strategies in this brutal world. As he examined the torn and battered pages, he realized that his healing abilities had expanded, allowing him to mend wounds with greater efficiency. He knew this was only the beginning, and the journey toward mastery was far from over. Every victory, every new item, was a stepping stone toward becoming a stronger, more capable survivor. In this harsh wasteland, hope was a fragile thing, but as long as he kept fighting, he believed that there was a chance to carve out a better future amid the chaos. A curious creature, driven by an insatiable hunger and a keen sense of curiosity, found itself in possession of a mysterious cookbook. The system, ever eager to enlighten, explained that not many beings possessed such knowledge. It revealed that even mutants could be consumed by humans, provided one was familiar with the safe parts, those not infected or corrupted. This revelation sparked a realization in Shaolin, whose sharp intellect immediately grasped the potential for easy sustenance. If certain parts of mutants could be safely eaten, then acquiring food became significantly simpler. It was a revelation that made the creature's entire outlook shift. The prospect of sustenance suddenly appeared far more accessible than before. With newfound confidence, Shaolin approached a zombie girl, who remained seemingly submerged in a crimson puddle, her form almost blending into the blood-soaked ground. Without hesitation, he placed something into her mouth. Perhaps a shard of glass, perhaps some food, he wasn't sure himself. A moment later, the zombie girl stood upright, completely and undeniably healthy. Her flesh restored, her movements fluid and vigorous. She looked at him with an expression that could be considered pleased or even delighted. Meanwhile, Shaolin had a strange, almost stoic demeanor, unperturbed by the uncanny recovery he had just achieved. Ayn, observing all of this, was utterly stunned. Just minutes earlier, Shaolin had been fleeing from the same mutant, trembling and retreating in cowardice. And now, he had boldly confronted and defeated a creature that previously seemed invincible. The entire sequence raised questions about the boy's true nature, whether mood swings or hidden strength accounted for his unpredictable actions. Shaolin's incredible turnaround left everyone dumbfounded, especially the girl zombie, who pointed at her own mouth in a manner that suggested she wanted to understand the secret. Shaolin, noticing her gesture, quickly told her to stop. What she was doing was peculiar and unsettling to watch. Meanwhile, Ayn had decided it was unwise to entirely rely on Shaolin's capabilities. Shaolin, her voice urgent, advised him to hold back. But Shaolin, ever playful, had already begun tossing her some snacks as they hurried along. Ayn, observing his actions, reflected silently that the boy's kindness was genuine, even if his methods were unconventional. Despite her reservations, she couldn't help but feel some reassurance in his good-heartedness. Their journey continued, with Shaolin turning to his sister and warning her about getting too close to the zombie woman. She was dangerous. Being bitten could mean catastrophe. The girl zombie suddenly shifted her gaze and stepped toward them, inspecting their faces. She licked some crumbs from the girl's lips, seemingly fascinated or perhaps driven by instinct. Shaolin immediately sensed impending danger. The girl zombie was about to act and dashed away, screaming at her to get back. Her reckless curiosity nearly led to disaster. At that moment, Lei Hong, the enigmatic figure, drew attention from the group. He approached Shaolin and proposed a daring idea. If it were possible to cure even a zombie, then perhaps he could help his own brother, who was on the brink of death. Shaolin's eyes flicked over the two fallen figures, the one wrapped in stripes and the other donning a steel mask, both barely clinging to life with flesh decaying and bones exposed. Lei Hong sighed deeply, acknowledging the severity of their condition. He explained that he had hoped Shaolin's skills could save them, trusting in his ability to heal. Shaolin looked at the wounded and furrowed his brow. He questioned why Lei Hong and his group kept trying to command him. He vividly remembered the pain from an earlier altercation. When Lei Hong had attempted to strike him, it had hurt immensely. Recognizing the genuine intent in Lei Hong's request, Shaolin responded calmly but firmly, saying he would help if the price was fair. Before Shaolin could voice a sum, Ayn placed a hand on her shoulder, pushing her back and declaring with resolve that he would not heal those villains, regardless of payment. The children nodded in agreement, labeling Lei Hong's group as villains based on their actions and appearance. Lei Hong, with patience, explained that their organization was founded on principles of justice, that they attacked only those who couldn't defend themselves. He insisted that if one of Shaolin's men had taken a life, that person could not be considered a good person. The children immediately objected. Their mother, they insisted, had been undoubtedly a kind and good person. Their association with Lei Hong's group did not change that fact. The group argued back, claiming that Lei Hong and his allies were the real villains, and that their ramshackle organization was driven by necessity, not malice. Fear and suspicion hung heavy in the air. Shaolin, observing this, shouted at Lei Hong, telling him to cease pretending. He knew that Lei Hong was lying. Deep down, when the wounds healed, Lei Hong would give the order to strike. But unexpectedly, Shaolin expressed a different opinion. He said he believed Lei Hong. The entire group fell silent, stunned by his unexpected declaration. In that tense moment, Shaolin drew a crimson cloth from his belongings, holding it in his hands. His gaze was fixed, and he asked Lei Hong if he had lost it during the chaos. Lei Hong confirmed he had taken it from the same enemy who had killed his mother, to keep it as a reminder of who he sought vengeance against. Shaolin pulled out a small knife, explaining that despite the symbols appearing identical at first glance, they were actually mirror images, reversed in orientation. To be honest, he himself had spent 2 minutes scrutinizing the symbols before realizing the difference. One symbol pointed left, the other right, a subtle yet significant variation. Someone had copied the symbol incorrectly, attempting to mimic the original. Aishin, one of the children, nodded, adding that the genuine symbol was far more precise than the counterfeit. The children commented that the fake symbol looked like it had been drawn by a child, leading the group to a realization. The leader of Lei Hong's faction scoffed, insisting that their symbol was crafted with great effort and pride. Shaolin then explained that it was common for rival groups to steal and imitate symbols to create conflicts and mistrust. Most likely, that was exactly what had transpired here. The entire little group was shaken. Their suspicions confirmed that enemies in this region had recently targeted them with deception and treachery. The leader clenched his fists in anger, overwhelmed with frustration and betrayal. His sister asked, in a voice tinged with bitterness, how they could now exact their revenge. Ein sighed heavily, contemplating the situation. He emphasized that revenge was futile, something his mother, if she were alive, would have lacked desire for. The children kept silent, pondering the implications of her words. Meanwhile, the masked figure, observing everything, muttered quietly that he wanted to eliminate those who were tarnishing his reputation. Despite his words, his health was failing. He was bleeding uncontrollably. Lei Hong, seeing the gravity of the situation now clear, sighed deeply and acknowledged that Shaolin might indeed be able to help his friend. Out of a generous spirit, Shaolin decided his fee would be modest, merely 10 crystals per person. The leader of the group immediately handed over the payment, and with that, some eggs were shattered, a seemingly simple act that carried profound symbolism. Initially, it seemed to be an effort to start breakfast, but the broken eggs had been the result of the earlier chaos, not breakfast preparations. Shaolin responded that this was an unusual circumstance and suggested that perhaps Lei Hong could simply recover his crystals without further complication. However, Lei Hong was not satisfied with such a simple solution. He refused to accept that, and Shaolin merely shrugged, saying he would find a way. The challenge, he realized, was how to make a waffle from eggs that had already been broken. This dilemma prompted him to consult his newly acquired spellbook. His eyes lit with inspiration as he found a perfect solution. Quickly, he reviewed the remaining ingredients he had at hand and began gathering pieces of octopus, following the instructions meticulously. First, he carefully removed the membrane and the tiny suction cups, almost as if he were playing a game of Minecraft, transforming the creature into cubed pieces. These cubes were then placed into a pot, mixed thoroughly, and finally poured onto a grill. The process, unconventional as it was, reflected his resourcefulness and ingenuity. He worked with focus and precision. The octopus was chopped, seasoned, and cooked, transforming into a tasty dish that defied expectations. From the chaotic start, eggs shattered during a firefight, he crafted something edible and satisfying. His mastery over culinary arts, coupled with his creativity, proved that even in the most adverse circumstances, solutions could be found. This effort exemplified the ingenuity that had allowed him to survive and adapt amidst chaos. As Shaolin continued experimenting with his new recipes, the surrounding group watched in fascination. The scenes of cooking, the clever use of ingredients, and his calm confidence highlighted the depth of his skills. Even in a world torn apart by violence and mistrust, he was able to find harmony, turning disorder into nourishment and hope. This resilience, combined with a sharp intellect and a generous spirit, remained the core of his approach to life, an answer to the chaos that engulfed them all. The golden-brown surface of the dish gleamed invitingly as it was carefully flipped over. A generous drizzle of salad dressing complemented its crispy exterior, and a delicate squirt of tomato sauce added just the right touch of tanginess. To complete this culinary masterpiece, it was crowned with a scattering of grated potatoes, giving it an irresistible, crispy topping. Once assembled, the octopus takoyaki, rich with flavor and expertly prepared, was ready to be served. The chef carried it over to a group of men, informing them that eating it would help them recover from their exhaustion, offering a comforting gesture in what seemed to be a moment of genuine camaraderie. Among them, a man distinguished by his striped casual attire immediately erupted with questions, displaying visible agitation. His voice cut through the air sharply as he demanded to know if Xiaoling had truly lost her mind. Was she seriously offering them mutant meat? The tension was palpable. Lei Hong, observing quietly, appeared intrigued and somewhat cautious, pondering whether consuming such strange food posed any genuine danger. Xiaoling simply responded, her tone matter-of-fact, that she was not going to return the crystals embedded in the meat. She clarified that if they wanted food, this was the only option available. There was no room for debate. The masked man hesitated. He inhaled deeply, scrutinizing the dish and recognizing that, at least, it emitted a pleasant aroma. With cautious yet curious resolve, he decided to try it, remarking that despite the unusual appearance, the scent was inviting. He declared that even if he met his end, he couldn't resist such tempting flavors. His desire to see the seemingly unscrupulous individual remove their mask was palpable, but before he could proceed, the food was already in his mouth, almost instinctively. Suddenly, the man clutched his throat. His face twisted as if strangling pain overtook him. His friends, alarmed, instantly erupted into chaos, frantic questions spilling from their lips as his posture suggested he was choking. Lei Hong's gaze sharpened. He shot a warning look at Xiaoling, his voice cold and commanding. If anything happens to my man, you'll be dead. The situation escalated rapidly, but before chaos could engulf them fully, a girl, a strikingly charming zombie, leapt to his defense, positioning herself protectively. Meanwhile, the masked man, visibly agitated and visibly unwell, muttered under his breath that the food was indeed delicious. Here they were, behaving as if they had stepped right out of a culinary manga like Shokuchiki no Soma. He launched into a passionate monologue describing the dish's qualities. The outer layer as soft as clouds, wrapping him like a warm embrace, while the intense seafood flavor sparked a vivid image of elven battles on his tongue. The dish resonated deeply, evoking the vast, pounding ocean within his soul. The tears streaming from his eyes evidenced just how profoundly he was moved by its deliciousness. The other two men shared uncertain glances, wondering if the dish was truly as extraordinary as claimed. Driven by curiosity, the trio surged toward Xiaoling, eager to sample the creation for themselves. The moment they tasted it, their reactions were identical, an immediate visceral attachment. One of them, in an almost reckless manner, seized a ball of takoyaki and forcefully shoved it into his companion's mouth. The recipient's expression was one of bliss as he exclaimed the dish was utterly incredible, overwhelmed by its flavor. Miraculously, the injuries inflicted on Lei Hong's body, seemingly severe, began to heal rapidly. His bones appeared to knit themselves together, and his wounds closed in moments. The scene was startling, a testament to some mysterious, possibly supernatural effect. The man, stunned, wondered if the octopus's power was responsible. Was this an illusion? An extraordinary technique? Xiaoling, known for her composure, merely grinned with a hint of arrogance, claiming it was just a small, special touch of her own. Her words hinted at her confidence and the secret behind the dish's seemingly magical properties. As realization dawned on the onlookers, they began to suspect the extent of Xiaoling's abilities. Tentative questions about whether she possessed actual supernatural powers creeping into their minds. Meanwhile, Lei Hong, having observed everything, nodded approvingly and gestured a thumbs up, visibly impressed. He hadn't anticipated that Xiaoling, the young girl he'd seen so often, could possess such remarkable talent. The sense of relief washed over him, easing any lingering doubts. Perhaps she was not a threat after all. He felt reassured that the girl's talent was genuine and that her skills extended far beyond mere cooking. Later, Lei Hong brought up the proposal Xiaoling had mentioned earlier, the idea of forming an alliance or some kind of cooperation. The boss of their group hesitated, mulling over the suggestion. His response was cautious. He stated he would consider it but did not give an immediate answer. The three men present, however, were adamant, vigorously opposing the proposal. They argued that the young outsider had already caused enough trouble. Her daring actions had assaulted them all, and she had no place in their plans. Their tone was contemptuous, resenting her audacity. One of the men sneered, claiming that the girl had simply shown off her food to attract attention, and that such arrogance would only bring trouble. The boss nodded in agreement. He affirmed that exposing such delicate, tempting food in broad daylight invited danger. Any decent bandit, he mused aloud, would try to steal what's on display. The words lingered in the air. Shaoling, unfazed, raised an eyebrow. Her reasoning was simple. If disguising food openly attracted bandits, then why had they brought her along in a sack, even if she was part zombie? A sudden uneasy silence fell across the group. The men shifted uneasily, and one of them scratched the back of his neck, mumbling awkwardly. Well, you know, he muttered, voice hesitant. It's because she's way too pretty. We figured, since she's so attractive, we'd just hand her over to the boss as a gift. Their casual tone revealed an unsettling attitude, something bordering on twisted fascination with their own actions. The younger members in the group looked at each other, an uneasy pause settling over them as they processed what they had just heard. Their thoughts lingered on the bizarre and disturbing nature of their companions' fetishes, which they found odd, yet somehow revealing. Meanwhile, inside Lei Hong's domain, Xiaoling's companion was in shock. Not only was she a zombie, but she was also distinctly vulnerable in the eyes of these degenerates. Lei Hong's masked man, aware of the tense atmosphere, leaned toward their leader and confided that he believed Lei Hong might appreciate the zombie girl, having seen him speak to women before. Nervously, he fidgeted, blushing slightly. The idea struck him as amusing, using the zombie as a kind of social crutch. Their plan was grotesque in its simplicity. They hoped that by employing a zombie girl to help Lei Hong overcome his fears, they could manipulate him more easily. Lei Hong's men, whose motives ranged from the pathetic to the outright sinister, were eager to orchestrate this scheme. Lei Hong, on his part, tried to maintain a composed front, though stories of his own insecurities surfaced. He was clearly uncomfortable with the idea of relying on a zombie girl for this purpose, yet he didn't want to seem weak. As he grappled with his feelings, his dominant personality attempted to suppress any signs of vulnerability. The idea of attempting to use her to trigger confidence made him sick to his stomach, but he kept his composure. Elsewhere, discussions about potential recruits for Lei Hong's operation continued. The system, a peculiar construct providing guidance and resources, reminded Shaolin about the urgent need to find someone suitable for his shop. Shaolin's mind was preoccupied. He believed he had already enlisted Aishin. Yet the system clarified that contractual commitments only activated once both parties agreed and the designated attire was worn. This revelation sparked Shaolin's imagination. He fantasized about an array of outfits: a long maid's dress, a professional doctor's coat, or a playful bunny suit, each outfit designed to entertain and impress, perfect for various social scenarios involving women and families. His mind wandered further, picturing the different costumes in vivid detail, imagining how they would look on her, and entertaining thoughts of how others might react. However, as the blue orb system swiftly interrupted these daydreams, it clarified that it was a genuine system and wouldn't provide such frivolous attire. Instead, an official-made outfit suddenly appeared in Shaolin's hands, designed with simplicity and practicality in mind. Displeased with the plain design, Shaolin looked at the costume thoughtfully. He expressed his disappointment aloud, noting that it was rather dull and unexciting. Without hesitation, he handed it over to the small family he was assisting, continuing his quiet, strategic planning even amid mundane details. Once upon a time, in a world teetering on the brink of chaos, a strange vision of order and disorder played out amid the ruins of civilization. People, creatures, and mysterious entities navigated a landscape transformed into a dense tapestry of survival, deception, and unexpected alliances. Among these individuals, a young man named Shaolin found himself caught in a whirlwind of confusion, intrigue, and revelation that threatened to upend everything he believed about himself and the world around him. It all began with a simple notion, an instruction that everyone must adhere to. The system, rigid and unyielding, demanded compliance. It decreed that certain garments, symbols of identity or concealment, must be worn. The girl, her eyes sparkling with excitement, was thrilled at the idea, viewing it as a step toward fitting into the strange new order. Xiao, however, seethed with frustration, his eyes blazing with anger, while Ain, the silent observer, merely appeared puzzled, torn between confusion and a desire for understanding. Xiaolin, seeking to calm the rising tension, spun a quick lie, claiming the necessity was solely because their clothes were dirty. He urged everyone to hasten their compliance, emphasizing that it was a mere formality, a trivial matter. Ain, on the verge of changing clothes right then and there, hesitated momentarily, contemplating whether to follow the instruction immediately or to demand more privacy. Before he could decide, Xiaolin swiftly intervened, suggesting discreet alternatives if privacy was a concern, subtly implying that the situation didn't warrant such embarrassment. Laughter echoed around them. Bandits, each one toughened by the harsh world they inhabited, and even the girl with vibrant blue hair, the embodiment of cool confidence, ridiculed the whole affair, dismissing it as a petty detail unworthy of concern. Yet Ain, unaffected by their mirth, was already in the process of slipping into his new attire, knowing deep down that something was inherently wrong with the situation, but unable to pinpoint exactly what. The complication, however, stemmed from Aishin. He was in remarkable health, and the buttons on his outfit refused to close properly. A grim spectacle unfolded as he struggled with his garment. A look of discomfort etched across his face. Suddenly, he endured a sudden hemorrhage, a violent, immediate burst of blood that nearly claimed his life. The shock froze everyone in place. Their eyes widened in horror as Aishin collapsed, a victim of the brutal reality they all faced. Shaolin, the young man witnessing this tragedy, snapped into action. His voice cut through the chaos as he commanded everyone to cease their voyeuristic stares. Respect was the only thing that mattered, especially towards the injured and the vulnerable, an earnest plea to preserve dignity amid despair. Instantly, a heavy object struck him on the head, snapping him out of his shock. Blurred and confused for a moment, he reached out to steady himself, glancing at Aishin with concern before realizing that what he saw was more than just injury. His mind raced. Something was amiss. The artist behind this entire spectacle had engineered it intentionally. Aishin's body, the perfect specimen, carved with muscles that seemed sculpted by the hands of a master, was no accident. It was a trap, meticulously designed to ensnare everyone aboard this unpredictable journey. The young man's thoughts swirled with suspicion as he stared at the seemingly flawless physique, realizing that appearances could be deceiving and that danger lurked beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Xiaoling, the other young girl present, looked on in terror, her eyes reflecting the growing realization that she might be the real victim here. Xiaoling's attention shifted to her. She, too, was in peril, yet she maintained her composure, a calculated smile curling on her lips as she declared softly, "I never said I was a woman," her words dripping with a mixture of mischief and defiance. The revelation stunned those nearby. Shaolin's gaze hardened as he demanded an explanation, sensing that this was more than just a joke or a disguise. Xiaolin, the more inquisitive of the group, pressed for answers. His voice pierced the tense atmosphere as he questioned why the apparent deception was necessary. Was it a strategy meant to lure enemies into a false sense of security? Did the person with hair styled like a pineapple feign weakness to manipulate others? The blonde, bleached-haired youth nodded solemnly, affirming the idea of strategic deception, an elaborate plan meant to turn perceptions upside down. Ain, listening closely, shrugged indifferently, arguing simply that he enjoyed dressing in such a way. His words, casual yet defiant, ignited a ripple of speculation. The girl with a playful smile chimed in, confessing her love for dresses, revealing her fondness for cross-dressing without shame. The word itself, cross-dressing, became a pivot point, a revelation that unsettled Shaolin even further. His dreams of a romantic assistant, of a life filled with gentle companionship, shattered under the weight of this new truth. Aishin, grinning with triumph, immediately grasped the implications. So, this had been his plan from the very beginning, to use appearances and disguise as tools of manipulation and control. Shaolin's mind spun with sudden clarity. The entire scenario, the orchestrated disguises, the deception, everything had been carefully calculated. His vision of a perfect partner was just another piece in this elaborate game. Yet, amid his chaos, he couldn't help but marvel at the artist's skill. Aishin's body, the epitome of physical perfection, was crafted with such precision that it seemed otherworldly. He thought about the contrast, the strong, chiseled abdomen that seemed out of reach for most, a body that could inspire dreams and envy. It was a specimen that, in normal circumstances, would be the pinnacle of admiration. Now, however, it served as a testament to the cunning of their unseen enemies. Suddenly, Shaoling, the girl with the striking demeanor, became visibly terrified. Her face revealed her fears. She understood now that the real victim in this tangled web was none other than herself. The realization hit her hard, deepening her dread as she examined the situation from a different perspective. Shaolin watched her, noting her expression, and felt a surge of empathy for her plight. His contemplation was interrupted when she chuckled softly, breaking the tension. "Why am I dressed like this?" she asked innocently. "What do you think people will say?" Her words were laced with self-awareness and a touch of defiance. Shaolin's curiosity grew stronger. He wanted to understand her motivations, whether she had pretended to be fragile to lure the enemies into a trap or simply enjoyed the freedom of self-expression. The girl with a pineapple hairstyle, ever sharp and perceptive, tilted her head as she pondered the question. "Perhaps he pretended to be weak to get the better of the enemies," she suggested. Her voice was calm, analytical. The blonde youth nodded in agreement. "It must have been a clever strategic move," he confirmed, highlighting the cunning behind such disguises. Ain, the quiet observer, only shrugged again, asserting that he dressed this way simply because he enjoyed it. No hidden motives, just a personal preference. The girl smiled again, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "I love dresses," she declared plainly, embracing her identity with pride, unashamed of her cross-dressing. Shaolin, overwhelmed by all these revelations, felt a heavy weight settle upon him. His idealized notion of a romantic helper shattered under the mounting complexity of their reality. Aishin, however, grinned with satisfaction, his eyes gleaming with a sense of triumph. He immediately grasped the significance of everything, the entire scheme, the deception, the masks they wore. At that moment, their system, a mysterious, omnipresent influence, reminded Shaolin that it was time to finalize his decision. A projection materialized before him, displaying contractual details. Duration, compensation, conditions, all laid out with clinical precision. With hesitant resolve, he took a pen and signed his name, Shan Xiaohu, a name that still carried echoes of his past, yet now was etched into his future. Curiously, why had the story initially presented him as Gao Shaolin? Now, it was too late for such distinctions. He was Gao Xiaohu now. He didn't intend to revert or rewrite his identity on a whim. The girl zombie observed him, her gaze curious and assessing as he completed his signature. When he finished, she handed him the contract, her expression unreadable. Ain, noticing her look of defeat, asked gently, "Why do you look so discouraged? You should be happy. Now, no one can say you're not my assistant." His voice was soft but firm, an assertion of reassurance amid the chaos. Meanwhile, Shaolin's thoughts drifted elsewhere. He lingered in a world of shadows and possibilities, contemplating his next move. Somewhere in the background, other protagonists moved between scenes. Their paths crossed in fleeting moments, some surrounded by beautiful women, others lost in their own struggles. Shaolin, however, was trapped in a different reality, a place where chores and innocence collided with danger and deception. He never imagined that his life would turn into such a miserable spiral, filled with uncertainty and masked identities. It was during this moment of reflection that the zombie girl suddenly burst into motion. She dashed forward with incredible speed, intercepting the contract before he could process what was happening. Clenching it in her mouth, she tore away into the distance, leaving Shaolin in a panic. "Don't do anything reckless," he shouted after her. But she had already left a mark, an indent on the contract at the exact spot where he was supposed to sign. With that mark, the contract was sealed, and light erupted violently from her body. A dazzling display unfolded. A blaze of flame, wind, clouds, static energy, surging outward with an unstoppable force. The entire scene erupted into a spectacle of pure energy and power, as if the universe itself was celebrating the moment of transformation. What followed was a revelation beyond expectations. This was the evolution everyone had been awaiting, the culmination of all the secrets, lies, and plans. Shaolin watched in awe, realizing that the artist's cruel creation had been worth all the pain. Despite everything, a strange sense of forgiveness washed over him. Whatever had been done, whatever chaos ensued, the moment justified it. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, transformation and rebirth could be possible. But at that point, Shaolin's voice rose to the heavens, filled with a mixture of defiance and longing. He refused to accept a future where he would be forced to work with a zombie or remain under someone else's control. His desire for independence burned fiercely, a flame that refused to be extinguished, even amid the chaos surrounding him. Later, outside a shop, Ein was fuming with frustration. He complained loudly that Shaolin had chosen a zombie instead of someone truly remarkable and handsome, like himself. Despite his grievances, he was not truly upset because he understood the truth of their situation. The compensation, the promise of work, these things mattered more than appearances. Essentially, he was going to continue working for Shaolin, even without an official contract, which merely meant he could leave at any moment if the opportunity arose. Shaolin sighed deeply, recognizing that they couldn't remain in this ruined place much longer. The world outside was unpredictable, dangerous, and uncertain. His thoughts turned inward, contemplating the next step. Suddenly, Ein looked at him with a mischievous grin, a sparkle of playfulness in his eyes. "Just kidding," he said softly. "I was playing with you. In fact, I'll join Lei Hong's gang. He promised to take care of me and the children. This might be our best chance to survive this chaos." Shaolin nodded in agreement, understanding the wisdom behind the decision. Despite their dubious reputation, the bandits seemed to be decent enough, at least in terms of offering protection to the innocent. Just then, the girl with the striking appearance called Shaoling, handing her a card. The girl had been transforming, her form changing as she emitted a faint glow. She carried a badge with her name, Fei Shaoling, and offered her thanks. At that moment, Lei Hong approached them, handing Shaolin a piece of paper with a specific location marked. It was their newfound base, a heavily fortified prison called the Chin Shan Penitentiary, equipped with alarms and security measures to withstand any threat. Shaolin looked at the map, contemplating the choice. Lei Hong explained that, before the apocalypse, no one would choose to wind up in such a place, but now, considering the danger, it was the safest option. Ein, ever quick to praise his own intelligence, gushed about how clever the plan was. The gang leader, slightly annoyed, yelled for someone to remove that crazy youth from his presence and to put him in proper clothes. Shaolin, meanwhile, argued that he would not change who he was. His right to dress as he pleased was fundamental to his identity and freedom. Time passed, and the mad gang dispersed, children waving goodbye, Lei Hong's crew offering friendly warnings to stay safe from zombies. Shaolin watched them leave, contemplating his uncertain future. He looked at the card in his hand, reluctant yet curious about what lay ahead. His thoughts drifted to the mysterious plans awaiting him, unsure of what the tunnel of fate held in store, but eager to discover what footprints he would leave in this new chapter of survival and self-discovery. In the future, he told Faye that something important, something destined to change everything, would happen. Yet, before he could fully explain or forecast what lay ahead, the girl he had been talking about, the one whose presence had been both comforting and mysterious, vanished without warning. One moment she was there, her eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and mischief, and in the next, she disappeared entirely. There was no trace of her departure, no farewell, just an abrupt absence that left an echo in the air. The girl's sudden disappearance had a strange effect on him. It was as if a curtain had fallen over his vision, leaving behind a void filled with questions and unspoken thoughts. Despite the silence she left behind, her absence didn't diminish the vividness of the scene or the impact of her words. Instead, it seemed to deepen the mystery, compelling him to search for meaning in the shadows of her departure. Meanwhile, she had already moved on to her next course of action, which was remarkably bizarre. She was engrossed in devouring everything that was available at the food stall she had earlier visited. Her appetite seemed insatiable, as if she was trying to compensate for the abrupt ending to their encounter or simply expressing her way of processing the sudden loss. She consumed her food with rapid, almost reckless enthusiasm, leaving no piece untouched as she practically ate her way through the selection. In the midst of this chaotic feeding frenzy, an unusual thought crossed his mind. To continue supporting the stories and adventures of the characters he cherished so much, he realized it was necessary to perform a small but meaningful gesture. He knew that to keep these stories alive and to help their creators bring more of these captivating tales to life, he had to show his support in a concrete way. His choice was simple but impactful. He needed to leave a positive acknowledgement, a like, on the video that featured these stories. By doing so, he would be helping to ensure that future episodes and narratives could continue unfolding, inspiring more viewers, delighting fans, and fostering the creative community. His support was essential. It was the fuel that allowed storytellers to keep dreaming and sharing their imagination with the world. He understood that every small action counted. A single click, a simple gesture of approval, could make a real difference. It was a way of expressing appreciation for the effort, the creativity, and the dedication that went into crafting such intricate stories. More than that, his interaction would help boost the visibility of these tales, allowing them to reach a broader audience and touch more hearts. With this realization, he committed himself to supporting the creators. He knew that his small act of kindness was part of a larger chain reaction, one that contributed toward a community where artistic expression and storytelling could thrive. Every viewer, every supporter, played a crucial role in nurturing the creative environment that brought these characters and narratives to life. As he reflected on the importance of community and support, he also hoped that others would see the value in these stories, that they would recognize the effort that went into each video, each chapter, each scene. His gesture of leaving a like was more than just a click. It was an acknowledgement of the hard work and passion poured into these creations. The stories he loved were not just entertainment. They were a source of inspiration, a window into worlds beyond his own, and a testament to human imagination's limitless potential. Supporting them was, therefore, a small act that carried significant meaning, an act of faith in the power of storytelling to inspire, to connect, and to transform. As he prepared to continue watching, he felt a sense of purpose. Supporting the storytellers was his way of giving back, of contributing to a cycle of creativity that enriched everyone involved. Every like, every comment, every share was a brick in the foundation of a vibrant, dynamic community of fans and creators, united by their love of compelling tales and vivid characters. He recognized that his participation was crucial, not just for himself but for the broader ecosystem of digital storytelling. Each support event, each positive engagement, helped nurture new ideas and foster a culture where creative voices could be heard and appreciated. With this in mind, he made the decision to keep supporting these stories. He knew that by doing so, he would help keep alive the magic of storytelling, ensuring that more incredible adventures, more fascinating characters, and more meaningful narratives would continue to flourish for years to come. He looked forward to future episodes, excited to see where the stories would go and how they would evolve. For him, supporting the creators was more than just a routine. It was a way of participating actively in an inspiring community. His small contribution was part of a larger movement that celebrated imagination, perseverance, and the unending quest for storytelling excellence. As the story continues to unfold, he remains committed to helping the creators succeed, knowing that their success also means his own access to extraordinary worlds and unforgettable tales. It is a mutually beneficial relationship, one rooted in appreciation, support, and a shared love for the art of storytelling. He hopes that his actions inspire others to do the same, to recognize the value of supporting creators and their work. Because in the end, it's not just about individual stories or videos. It's about building a vibrant community where creativity can blossom and dreams can come true. And so, as he watches more stories unfold and more characters come to life, he continues to believe in the power of support and encouragement. Knowing that even the smallest gesture can make a big difference fuels his dedication to this cause. Every story deserves to be heard, every character to be celebrated, and every creator to be recognized for their talent and effort. He remains hopeful for the future, eager to see how these stories will grow and inspire more fans around the world. And as he moves forward, he does so with a full heart, ready to support the creators and their incredible visions, confident that together, they can create something truly extraordinary, something that will resonate beyond screens and stories, touching lives and sparking imaginations everywhere.